Jack.
Levi.
The Book Club from Hell.
Hello everyone, this is Jack with the Book Club from Hell, and I'm the spirit of an interstellar druid who has become trapped in the body of an Australian human during a freak remote viewing accident. My soul is in torment within this prison of flesh. Please help me. I am in indescribable agony. How did humans evolve? Alright, I've given you about a second. Now, hold that answer in your mind and see if it's the same as what actually happened. Humans arose from apes who discovered that eating the brains of other apes made them horny and more intelligent. This increased intelligence was heritable, and over thousands of years of crazed, brain-fueled breeding, we got to where we are now. An unnaturally intelligent, hairless ape cut off from the extrasensory perception that is the gift of every animal except for us. How did I come across these breathtaking truths? By reading Oskar Kiss Maerth's opus, The Beginning Was the End. Written in 1968 in a Buddhist monastery in Guangdong Province, China, from its publication in 1971, this book has attracted attention for its wild claims, backed up by Mr. Maerth's conversations with a cannibal, meditation, and one night where he ate monkey brains for dinner. This man didn't need to read books. It's a wild ride, albeit one that I wouldn't recommend you take. I hated this book. But, fortunately for all of you children of cannibals, Levi and I have read this groundbreaking tome and are here to present to you all the truths, true and untrue, to be found within. Enjoy.
Now, Jack, you're a biologically educated gentleman. I sent you this book with the express. So this book, audience, our book today is The Beginning Was the End by Oskar Kiss Maerth. I believe that's how it's pronounced, though I think he was German, so maybe I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
I think he was born in Hungary, but
Hungary?
wrote in German, so it's... Yeah, I mean, they don't have the th sound. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Maerth. I don't know.
I apologise.
I don't really care. I hated this book so much. I don't give a shit about how his name's pronounced.
I specifically chose this book to fuck with Jack. Because I've noticed
this was
Jack has a
This was the worst thing we've read.
Jack likes biology. He's studied quite a bit of it. And I've noticed there's a running theme whenever something biological comes up in any of our discussions that it can really grate Jack. And I just thought an entire book of that would be hilarious.
I hate.
Don't worry, you can pick one
so much.
Next. Yeah. What were your thoughts going in?
So I'm sorry to say that I'd actually already heard of The Beginning Was the End, the book about monkeys eating each other and getting really intelligent and not being psychic anymore.
Sorry. Sorry, people were laughing at you. As the audience, I can't control
Settle
them.
Down. I'm just that funny.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I'd already heard of it, that it was a noted pseudoscientific work where some Hungarian German guy just makes shit up about how humans evolved. But I didn't quite expect you to send it to me. This book has everything that we on this podcast, I don't know if I'd say we love, but that we subject ourselves to. Really racist.
That we seek out.
Lot of sexism, strongly
Really
pseudoscientific, very wacky. Brings in the woo-woo in a big way. I didn't expect this much woo-woo, but he's got it in there. I don't think it was anti-Semitic, so there's, you'll dock points for that. In the game of Book Club from Hell Bingo, you don't check off the strongly anti-Semitic square, but he makes up for it in other places.
Which is surprising because he really could have weaved it in there if he wanted to.
Definitely. Well, given his extended discussion of race,
anti-Semitism.
Yeah, you could have gotten in some anti-Semitism here, and it would have fit in.
So you already had a little bit of an
it?
inclination about what this book was like, but it surpassed your expectations. Great.
Oh, this was so much worse than I thought it would be. This was I'd prefer to read several Evola books. instead of this again or anything else by this man.
Yeah.
And at the end of this book, he promises a series of books. At the end of this book, he promises a series of more books.
Yeah.
I had a look at, I think he wrote a few more things, but nothing as ambitious as what he promised.
No, he never wrote another full book. Hey. So this guy, apparently he wrote this whilst like in isolation in some like Chinese monastery, like somewhere, so like a monastery in rural China. And I don't think he has any relevant background. The thing that I read about the background of this, which I don't know, is this a reputable source? I don't know, it's just some fucking website said that he got this idea when he was eating like monkey brains in like a Chinese restaurant or something whilst he was traveling. And
I read that exact thing. That
this lightning strike
sources. It was he talked to a cannibal or someone who knew a cannibal. He ate monkey brains somewhere in Asia, and
then he was inspired. He just realized the flaw in Darwinian evolution. It's pretty amazing. So we're not ruining anything by saying, because it says on the front cover, it says, "Man came into being through cannibalism. Intelligence can be eaten."
Can be eaten.
So this entire 200 and something page book, 240 page book or whatever, is just this cooked fucking dude outlining his theory of why we didn't evolve from ape-like ancestors just by kind of slow natural evolution responding to like whatever environmental factors. We ate intelligence. We ate the intelligence out of each other's brains.
Exactly. And it's an interesting work because nothing is really justified in it. So I'm not saying that the only way to justify an argument is to say cite sources, have an extensive bibliography and things like that. But given the concrete claims he keeps making, you would expect at least some sort of reference to say, or just any sort of work, any body of work that might back up what he says. It doesn't have to be scientific because, as we'll get into, he strongly distrusts the scientific establishment. Capital S scientists as a whole are a group who are not only out to get him, but out to mislead the entirety of humanity as to humanity's provenance. But there is no justification for anything that he says in this book. He'll make all sorts of concrete statements.
Pure deductive logic, Jack. He doesn't need to provide evidence.
Pure logic. And logic to quite a messianic end. At the start of the book, he dates his book 3,200 years after Moses, 2,753 years after Lao Tzu, 2,510 years after Buddha, 1,967 years after Christ, and 1,400 years after Muhammad. So obviously, he's placing himself in the same line as Moses, Lao Tzu, Gautama Buddha, Christ, and Muhammad. He obviously values his opinions very highly.
He starts off strong.
I will say this about Oskar. He's a very confident dumbass.
He's probably the most confident moron I've ever read.
And actually, I'll give him this. He writes well. I'm not sure if actually we must have.
I don't know
read
if he does
translation.
because we don't know. This is a
German.
Translation by by Judith Hayward. So she writes well.
Okay, well,
she's translated.
Judith Hayward writes well. Maybe,
presumably, he wrote well enough for her to do this translation well. So,
yeah, holy shit! Can you imagine? It was bad enough reading this. Can you imagine translating it?
Dude, could this poor woman fucking spent like dozens and dozens of hours of fucking translating this cunt's batshit insane thoughts. But what might have been worse than the fact that she translated it and spent all this time translating it. Now her name is forever associated with this fucking abomination. Who's Judas Hayward? What was your legacy? I translated the beginning was the end into English.
Yeah, that's the true punishment. That's
so
the punishment
he gives a message
this into English.
Oh, no. Horrible. So he gives a message at the beginning of the book. He says, man has discovered many things, but not himself. He gave to himself the name Homo sapiens, which means like man the wise, doesn't it? Something like that, Jack.
Yeah,
wise
something
man.
like that.
The justness of this self-baptism was not endorsed by any competent authority, as if there's an authority for this sort of thing. So know yourselves and the truth concerning your origins, readers. Alter your goals accordingly before it is too late. From the Sinsan Monastery, China. This is a warning. I find it so strange. We've read enough of these books now that I feel like I'm starting to see some patterns. And
yeah. Yes.
And yeah, there's a number here, I guess, touching on the thing that we were saying before about confidence or whatever. He's an incredibly arrogant writer.
Oh, fuck yeah. He's worse than Terence McKenna in terms of arrogance. He might be the most arrogant we've read.
Yeah, what was that guy's fucking Robert Anton Wilson? He was pretty bad. But yeah, I think this guy might be worse.
Robert. Okay, I reckon this guy's more.
At least Robert Anton Wilson was
Wilson,
self-deprecating, I suppose.
He was self-deprecating. He was funny, and every now and then, normally granted when it was convenient to his argument, he would leave open the possibility that he too was trapped in his own reality tunnel and unable to see outside of it. Yes, that was often very self-servingly employed, but he would sometimes acknowledge that he too was a fallible human being and might make mistakes. Whereas Oskar Kiss Maerth, there is no inkling that this man could possibly be wrong.
It's like airtight. This guy thinks his every argument, he thinks he's airtight.
And so what I think this guy is master of the straw man. I don't think I've read someone who straw mans his opponents. And remember, I have seen Reddit, which is really just a gigantic straw man on the internet.
Is it one giant straw man, or is it a million tiny little straw men? This motherfucker.
A forest of straw men surrounding a gigantic straw man. I'm
surprised that
this guy's in. Go on.
No, sorry, go on.
No, this guy's entire argumentative apparatus is basically to make up really dumb arguments and ascribe them to scientists and then disprove them, except disprove them in an even dumber way than the dumb argument he formulated and ascribed to scientists. You know how... Yeah, this is what this guy does. Have you ever been really angry with someone and you're not with them anymore? Someone's really pissed you off. You've gone home. And in your head, first you start going over some argument that you had with them and you're pissed off. And then you start moving away from the facts. You then start arguing with them in your head, but they're saying things that they never said and you're still arguing with this imagined version of them. Have you ever done that, or am I just particularly vindictive?
No, I'm of perfectly sound mind. I am Zen-like. I just have clear head all the time, Jack. I have no reference, point of reference. No, I know what you mean, man. Yeah. And afterwards, you're like, damn, I should have said this thing.
Yeah.
That would have.
So this entire book is 240 pages of this guy arguing with capital S scientists in his own head, except there was never that point of like where you're getting really pissed off at this person that you're arguing with in your head. There's never that point where you realize, oh, I'm being a complete jackass. I'm gonna go for a walk or have a run or something just to clear my head.
Yeah.
This guy never did that for the entire duration of writing this book. That moment never came. So he just gets angrier and angrier and angrier at these imagined scientists that he's arguing with that he's never talked to.
Yep. Jack just summed up the entire fucking book. There's 240 pages of him.
Listeners, If you want to stop listening, that is basically this entire book.
But you shouldn't stop listening. You should keep on listening. And the reason why is because
No, keep listening.
he goes crazy. Like it's batshit insane.
Yeah, this is
that's
one of the more
high-level
unhinged
overview.
things we've read.
And I was reading this book, at one point, I don't know which book I said it about. It might have been Anton Wilson, or was it another book? It's in one of our episodes. I was like, oh, I think this might be the worst book we've read so far. And you're like, no, I think you said something like, yeah, but you say that about every book. It seems as though the most recent book we've read is just the worst book we've read so far.
It's just like in memory.
There's a proximity delay, like a proximity
the latest
exponential decay function of like how far away we get from the the book, we can like tolerate it more. But actually, if we could like run these many universes in parallel and experience all the books simultaneously, like which book would we really think is the worst?
It's hard to say because I really think this is the worst thing we've read. But then again, say when I was reading Varg, I absolutely hated it. Evola was difficult, but I didn't hate Evola.
No,
Robert Anton Wilson. Actually, I got sick of Robert Anton Wilson, but I didn't hate it. I acknowledge that it was well written.
I really
makes
dislike
up for
pseudoscience.
Yeah,
I haven't read a huge
interesting.
amount of pseudoscience in my life because every time I've been exposed to it, I just get really angry. And now
Me too. I think it probably
pursuing
says
it.
something bad about me. It says something bad about me that I can read that pseudoscience, particularly pseudoscience as it responds to medical science or evolutionary theory, gets me angrier than when I'm reading some really toxic anti-Semitism or something just malignantly misogynistic or something like that. Those things get me less angry.
Do you think
than
it's maybe
reading
because
pseudoscience?
we've been pretty fortunate to have studied quite a bit of science, and that maybe it's cutting a bit too close to home for us. And it's do we take these things for granted? Did I ever tell you about? I dated this girl. I only dated this girl for like 2 or 3 dates, and she was studying. She was, so it's not really dating. Like we saw each other a couple of times, but she was studying. She was studying alternative medicine, and I was just like, man, she's pretty good looking, so I just wanted to sleep with her. So I was just like, yeah, fuck it, whatever. but after I dated that, after I stopped seeing that girl, I made a commitment to myself that I would never, ever in my life sleep or date someone or sleep with somebody if they were studying alternative medicine, because the like cognitive overhead of trying to like suppress my urge to tell them what I really think of their education was so high, it wasn't worth like seeing her. It wasn't worth seeing her. And I remember this, she was studying like Chinese medicine or some alternative medicine thing. And she's trying to explain to me yin and yang. No, not yin and yang. There's some it's like the life force. There's some term they fucking use for it. Like, there's this life force that runs through everyone, and when you do like, I don't know, acupuncture or pressure points, you're like channeling the chi. You're channeling the chi to like get the body to heal itself and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, but like, what is chi? She's like, it's energy. And I'm just thinking, well, you clearly don't mean it's like ATP to ADP, do you? Like, that's not, you're talking about the conservation of energy, you're talking about something else. So what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean. And we were standing on this hill, like looking at the city at Melbourne, and it was like in the summer, and some bats flew over the top of us, and it's like beautiful orange sunset city and bats flying over. It's like very romantic. And then she spoils it. She looks at the bats and she looks at me and she goes, see? Chi. That's the chi. It's the fucking bats. The bats are the chi. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I can't deal with this. It's not worth dealing with this person.
No. Fortunately for us, though, this book that you chose, and I blame you for this, not only does it have all of that woo-woo pseudoscience, but he blends it with saying like, oh, Papua New Guineans and Australian Aboriginals are just less evolved and have much smaller brains than everyone else.
Less than 1,300.
Women are just much stupider than men because of the
but it's not sexist,
monkey brain eating hypothesis of evolution.
Women naturally have
exactly.
smaller brains. They haven't had to consume human brains. So that's just their place. They're just like, you can't hate a woman for being a woman, and we shouldn't, what was his argument? He was saying like, we shouldn't expect them to be as smart as men and use education to try to train them to be as smart as men. And then he's like, it's like trying to get an Indonesian or like a Timorese Aboriginal person to be as smart as a Chinese person purely through using education. If those people haven't been consuming brains for the last 100,000 years, how are they supposed to catch up?
Yeah, he's got this thing where he talks about, so you have plenty of, say, people of Western European descent or Han Chinese descent whose brains are between 1,200 and 1,400 cubic centimetres. And, of course, no one from, say, East Timor has a brain that big. And with things like this will be a very common theme. These are things that you can actually check for yourself. Like, verify. And he's just not right. It's just not true.
There's so many things. I took an attitude of like, I'm not going to fact check anything this guy says. I'm just gonna assume it's all false. But even just things I could just see this on the surface of them. He'd just say like X is the case. I'm just like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Anyways, should we get into it?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll quickly say what the chapters are, and that can be our kind of guidance for the episode. And then listeners.
Chapter 7 is a special one.
We'll unpack all the chapters. Yeah, it's so good. So the chapters are the newcomer without memory, i.e. humans, the collapse of a theory, i.e. Darwinian evolution, the empty skulls. Chapter 4 is the great changes. Chapter 5 is the damaged brain. Chapter 6 is speech. Chapter 6 is where he really starts to jump the fucking shark. Chapter 7, the origin of races. Jack's favorite chapter. Chapter 8, Genesis, where he starts getting messianic. And Chapter 9, the immediate future, where he gives us prescriptions about what to do as young people who are going to live at least 70 years.
And promises a large number of sequels. To the beginning was the end.
A large number of sequels, yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Should we jump into Chapter 1, Jack?
Yeah. How about I open this up with a quote? The road from ape to man was made up of a chain of criminal acts contrary to the laws of nature. Man has become the lunatic genius of the universe, whose diseased mind, with its absurd objectives, is necessarily and inevitably becoming his doom. He's got this idea. So he says human beings, and remember, he's not qualifying this by saying, okay, well, from the perspective of someone from Europe, this is what people think. No, all human beings think this way. He says all human beings at one stage stood at the top of a pyramid. They'd constructed this pyramid in their minds, and humans stand at the top of it, and everything else is below humans. But little by little, discovery by discovery, human beings realized that maybe they didn't belong at the top of this pyramid. They found out that they initially thought that they were the center of the universe, the center of the world, but then they found out that the earth was not flat, but was spherical. And he says there is no center to a sphere, which is the first of many things that he says which don't make sense.
I had to do a double take on that. I was like, wait a second, did you just say that there's no center to a sphere? I was like, and I was like, hold on, let me I was so perplexed by him saying that I had to double check that I understood what a sphere was. I was like, no.
It's like, I mean, I guess if you're wanting some sort of, I'm assuming that he was going for poetry rather than Yeah, being
There's
very
no
generous. You can say,
center
okay,
to
maybe,
the surface
maybe
of
he
a
means
sphere.
that. Yes, there isn't. Yeah, no center to the surface of a sphere, or say humans don't stand at the center of a spherical Earth. But then, fuck this guy. Like, by having read this entire book, I'm not actually sure that he's being poetic. I think he might actually have
I don't
thought,
think
oh
he's
yeah,
being
that's
poetic, dude.
yeah.
I don't think he's being.
Yeah, anyway,
I
so
think
there's
he's
no
just
center to a
fucking
sphere.
moron.
He says, so that's a step down from the top of the pyramid. Humans have already somewhat worked out that they're not the center of everything because they're not at the center of a sphere because that doesn't exist. They realize that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth revolves around the sun. So once again, not everything in the universe is revolving around humanity. Then he discovers the descent from human beings from apes. We'll get into his interesting interpretation of evolution, but I'm standing within his paradigm. Not that we share a common evolutionary ancestor with apes, but that we are directly descended from chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, and things like that, is what he says. But in finding this out, we take another step down the pyramid. He says of humans, now he stands on the lowest step and consoles himself with the remaining scraps of his once splendid conceptions concerning himself and his imagined world. Humans are worrying now about things as fundamental as, do we have souls? Do animals have souls? Is there any difference between us and other animals? Are humans special? And humans are more and more anxious and nervous because humans want to be special and have told themselves that they're special for so long. And
yeah, and
he does this
in a weird way, and it's a pretty obvious trend, so it's not like he gets any points for it. But yeah, the story of science over the last few hundred years has been shifting our own perception of our place in the universe and our place amongst other animals. Sure. So he's off to. I was kind of like, okay, like at this point in the book, sure, I'm coming along. Coming along.
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of still curious, like, how is he going to turn this into cannibalism? into cannibalism?
Exactly. I will continue. So I think almost every episode, or most episodes, and to an increasing extent, I've tried to be almost unreasonably generous to the people whom we've read.
Oh, you've been great. You've been so magnanimous, Jack. At times, I feel like I've been talking with the author of these books. But no.
Yes, so
reaching
deep down and being
out,
generous. No, being generous, yes. That's, as you said, it's a pretty obvious trend, so I'm not sure how many points he really deserves for it, for observing it. But yes, humans have been dethroned to an extent by science over the past...
I'm always cautious of giving these people
150,
points.
200 years. Yeah.
But yes, points.
But yes, this is an obvious one. So say heliocentrism, yes. Modern evolutionary theory, yes. They stand in opposition to the idea that human beings are these incredibly unique creatures in the universe. So I guess we'll give him some points for that. For that true, albeit extremely obvious observation. But
yes, anybody who's read Bill Bryson, yes, the big butt, the big old jiggly butt is going to come and smack him in the face.
Yeah, it's chapter 2. The collapse of a theory is where the wheels really fall off.
It falls off. I mean, pretty quickly.
The wheels had already fallen off.
Chapter 1 is but an extremely short chapter.
To torture the analogy, the car has exploded by chapter 2. Chapter 3, its charred wreck gets hit by a meteorite. Do you have anything else to say about chapter 1? Chapter 1 was kind of just lining things up.
I was, by the end of chapter 1, I was kind of thinking like, oh yeah, won't, like, because I think, again, maybe it's not his writing, but at least the translated, like, it reads really well. So
yes, that's true. It reads very nicely.
So I was like, okay, this isn't going to be like reading some of the books that we've read that are also difficult to read because they're just so poorly written. Whereas this was like fine. But I was going into chapter 2. I was just thinking like, how does he dispute Darwinian evolution? And I don't know. I was just kind of curious.
Yeah. So much of this book is based upon a fundamentally flawed conception of evolution.
No, he confused me.
I think
I got thinking to myself like, do I understand
it.
evolution? I don't know if I do now. Cause,
yeah. This guy just doesn't understand evolution. And he's got this very odd idea of, say, natural versus unnatural evolution that he never quite explains where he draws that distinction, but he draws it quite vehemently. He just doesn't tell you how he does it.
I'm going to beat the shit out of a dead horse, but this is primarily for... If this is your first episode, hello, welcome. This is the Book Club from Hell. You've made it to the 30-minute mark. Well done. But for the listeners who have listened to multiple episodes before, you probably heard me talk about Popper. I'm not going to rant this time, I promise. But Popper does make the point about people confusing normative and natural laws, and this guy is confusing the two. Like, he's saying like, there's these moral things and they shaped so that, like, it's unnatural to eat other humans, so now like nature's punishing us by giving us like all these ailments. And it's just like, no, that's not what we mean by natural selection or unnatural. Like, it's not a normative statement. So that's like permeates his entire thinking, because he's like, we're acting against cosmic order, which is really weird. It's just like, how can an animal act? Like, say we're pre-sentient animal, or like not pre-sentient, say we're sentient, but we, like universal cognitive capacity or whatever you want to call us. Like, if they started eating brains and animals don't have moral valence, then how could them eating brains be an immoral act that then got them punished by nature? Mm-hmm. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Anyways. Let's get into it. Yeah. You were saying he's got a fundamental misconception about evolution.
So I'll briefly outline some of the ways in which he mangles evolution by natural selection. Actually, how about I'll start out by explaining basically how it does work, because it's the sort of theory that once you understand it, it seems almost tautological.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I see it misinterpreted quite frequently. So the basic
I'm going to preface what you say, Jack, just before you jump into it. So I don't feel as though I understand evolution very well, but Jack and I did study biomedicine, and Jack studied virology. So like, that has a fair bit of stuff about evolutionary science in it. So Jack actually has got some underlying understanding of this stuff.
Although within the context of this book, that's a disadvantage because it means I've been brainwashed.
Yeah, you've been indoctrinated.
But basically, the fundamental idea of evolution by natural selection is that things that persist. So, say in the case of some sort of animal or an organism, one of the things it exists for is to replicate itself. Say human beings have children, and we exist in an environment in which not everything survives. There are limited resources, there are dangers in the environment, not everything survives. The more capable of surviving something is, the more likely it is to reproduce. And in reproducing, the things that survive pass on the traits that survived. And there's no say, moral valence here. There's no intentional selection. It's just if something persists and passes on, in the case of, say, organic life, it's genes. In those genes will be some sort of advantage that allowed it to persist. So imagine you've got a group of people, and at the other end of a 100-meter racetrack, say there's just not enough food to feed all of them. And so they all run to the end of this 100-meter course, and the ones who get there first are the first ones who are going to get to eat. And so if you just keep doing this, if this is the only way you get food, only the really fast ones are going to live. Because if you're too slow, you're not going to get fed. And there is an element of randomness to this. So suppose someone is really, really fast, but they trip over, and someone slower than them gets the food. That will still over time average out to the ones who are faster will just get more food. And they're the ones who are going to survive and the ones who are going to reproduce. And so their children, the children will be the children of the ones who are faster. And then if you run that for another generation, this really, really bizarre, quite unnatural scenario of doing this 100 meters to get food. If you just keep doing this over time,
it kind of did happen, didn't it?
You're just going to have the children of the ones who are faster having children with ones who are faster. And over a long period, those descendants will themselves be faster.
And how long does it take?
It's not that, say, in running this over and over again, an individual organism is going to pass on genes that are faster.
Yeah, the other important thing to note about it is that, like, it's about a big part of it is, like, the frequency or the proportion of particular genes in a population. So, like, the genes encode information and then the body expresses that information in the individual organism's, like, phenotype, what's called the phenotype. And those the genes and the phenotypes, like, appear in different frequencies in a population. And one of the key things is, like, when populations are separated by, like, for whatever reason, like over some geographical region, maybe like birds separate over islands in the, I don't know, like an archipelago, like they're subject to different selective pressures from their environment, and the frequency of different phenotypes in those two populations that are now separated will change over time as the different environments kill off unfit individuals in each population. So this is this is very different. This guy does not seem to, like, he thinks that it's almost like, did you get the impression that he thought it was almost like within the lifetime of like a single organism?
It was very Lamarckian.
Yeah.
So the way that he talks about it seems to be that if an individual animal does a thing a lot, they'll improve at whatever thing they're doing, which is true.
His entire
but then he
argument
seems
is
to think that you can pass
like
it
you can literally eat, like you're eating the intelligence of your forebears.
This is Lamarckian, and then you can pass on that eaten intelligence. But he doesn't provide a mechanism for that. He doesn't provide a mechanism for how eating brain changes your gametes such that you can then pass on that increased intelligence as well as all of the other problems with your pituitary gland that he claims.
It's almost as if
eating
the way that the sense that I got from it is that he thought that like intelligence was like a substance inside the brain. Like what the fuck intelligence is, like what he means by intelligence. But apparently it's some sort of substance that's in your brain. And when you eat the brain, you absorb the intelligence from the brain that you're eating.
Exactly. And what he says, to frame this, he says that the last grasping attempt of human beings to stay on this pyramid that they built themselves is to say that human intelligence evolved naturally. And if something is natural in this guy's telling, it's ethically good, or it's something being natural is a very normative statement. And something being unnatural is bad. And so humans, particularly human scientists, say that human intelligence evolved naturally, which is to mean that it is in keeping with the cosmic order, which is to mean that it is good. Whereas this guy says, no, human evolution was unnatural, therefore it's bad. And this is knocking humans off that final step of the pyramid. So much of this book is him looking at different aspects of how he thinks that people say that humans evolved and then disagreeing with them. One such thing is a quote I've got here where he describes fossil remains of pre-human hominids in East Africa, some of whom were using tools and some of whom weren't. He says this disproves natural evolution. He says of these finds of some pre-human hominids having used tools and some not. I should preface this also by saying I don't know if this is actually true or not, if these fossil remains were found or not. Anyway.
Well, why don't we take the attitude of like when he says something like that, we'll just take it as it. Should we just be like, okay, we'll grant you that claim. Let's see what you do with it.
Yeah. In some cases, yes. So he says, this flatly contradicts the theory of natural evolution, for if some natural reason some breed of ape became embarked a process of development leading towards man, then all members of that breed who lived at the same time in the same geographic place would have to undergo the same process. It is not consistent with natural evolution that a section of the breed should suddenly begin a rocket-like ascent towards human development, become clever and produce tools, while the remaining section living at the same time in the same place remains ape and does no more than look on in astonishment. So, if a group of pre-human hominids started using tools and this provided a survival advantage over their contemporaries who didn't use tools, that's actually perfectly in keeping with... I'm not sure what he means totally by natural evolution. When he says natural evolution, my assumption is that evolution but positively valenced. Good evolution, the evolution that he likes. They started using tools and they got a survival advantage, they'd outcompete non-tool users, and that'd be totally in keeping with evolution. I'm not sure how that disproves evolution.
I think his issue, from what I could pick up, and I actually highlighted the immediate next paragraph, so I'll just say that in a tick. But
continue, yeah.
Yeah, I found that he, what he was saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he was saying like they're in the same group. So he was like, they're in the same place at the same time, and then some subsection of them started using tools and rocketed off. Why didn't all of them go with them? Like why aren't chimps and gorillas and bonobos and gibbons and shit using the tools as well? So the next paragraph he says, and this is a good example of where this person just flatly strawmans the shit out of the opposing, or not the opposing, like who's opposing this guy?
We're going to see an army of strawmen here.
So he says, so the end of the previous place remains ape and does no more than look on with astonishment. Strange to tell, the apes which did not produce tools disappeared without trace, while the others continued to further their development. Did the former die out because they were not clever enough to keep themselves alive? Does that mean you have to become human to avoid extinction? Then how is it that other breeds of ape, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans among them have not become extinct? It's like, mate, fucking, you got me. I can't.
The sole criterion for survival is to become human.
Hey, that's actually a good point. There's been a number of people that we've covered on this show who either talk directly about sort of human evolution or whatever, or like debate it. I think Terrence, Robert Anton Wilson, probably a bunch of them actually. And yeah, again, this is a recurring theme that Jack and I have actually spoken about before, which is like other apes are not like, it's not, humans aren't the zenith of some like target that other animals are trying to become like us. Like chimps.
There's no
and gibbons and
teleology to
gorillas.
this.
Yeah, they're not like getting more intelligent to become like Planet of the Apes. Like we're like humans, and now we've got the planet, and we're the big dick. Like there's not. They're just as evolved as we are. Their environment selected for a different fitness along different parameters. So like under certain circumstances, it's much better to be a gorilla or a chimpanzee in certain environments. It's normally better to be a human, so long as you've got your technology. But if you don't have technology, like humans don't do so well in most environments. So other primates are very evolved creatures.
Yeah, for their niche.
Equally
It
evolved.
just happens that human intelligence is very generalizable, so we can actually adapt ourselves to a far greater variety of niches than other animals.
Jack,
but
even better. We adapt our niche to us. We adapt our environment to us.
Yeah.
Have you ever rethought of what is a car? Like people think a car is like a mode of transportation, but in fact, that is not what a car is. A car is a micro environment. We wrap ourselves with like an exoskeleton. Because the car's service as a transportation device is also limited by how much it can protect you from the environment. And really good examples of that is like when you're in harsh environments, like, you know, like really like Alaska or something, and you've got to drive through. Like humans can't get around Alaska without cars and trucks. So yeah, we have the great advantage of actually like modifying the environment around us. So we're pretty cool. But I'm a big fan of humans. Yes.
Anyway, so when he's saying
my pro technology,
does that mean you have to become human to avoid extinction? No, because
no, it fucking doesn't.
So I think this is something I see quite often where people ascribe almost an intentionality to evolution. So with evolution, there's a big element of randomness. So say a creature has some sort of particular adaptation, like one pre-human hominid, so one animal that existed before the last common ancestor of, say, human beings and chimpanzees. Say that one was smarter than another pre-human hominid or, say, ape. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to survive. It might have some sort of adaptation that doesn't make it more likely to survive and it'll die out. Suppose one is more intelligent, but it's in an environment which doesn't really reward intelligence. It's going to die out. It's not that there's some consciousness selecting for, oh, look, that one's more intelligent, I'm going to make that one live. It's not as if an individual animal is trying to become intelligent because it knows that it's going to evolve into a human being if it does that. It just happens that
stretching its neck to
more
get to the
intelligent
higher leaves, Jack.
Yeah. It just happens that more intelligent individuals of the species that preceded human beings bred with other members who were also intelligent. That eventually led to human intelligence in the same way that, say, human beings are excellent distance runners. And it just happened that in the environment where humans evolved, being a very good distance runner was actually something that made you more likely to reproduce and survive. There's not an intentionality to this.
Before.
Yeah, there's not an intentionality to this. It's just that the creatures which are more capable of surviving and reproducing are more likely to survive and reproduce.
Or the ones that are more likely to survive and reproduce, like their features will increase in proportion in the proportion of the population.
Increase in frequency.
It's like that's two ways of saying the same thing. It's actually two ways of saying the same thing. But also, if there's any PhD like population biologist or whatever out there that are like listening to us and they're like, Jack and Lou, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, we apologize. I personally haven't studied this stuff for a long time, but at least I'm pretty sure I understand it more than fucking Oskar does.
Tell us in the Discord if we're wrong.
Yeah, come join the Discord. We're having fun.
Shout out to, is it Trent and Heilich?
Heilig, Trenton Heilig. Yeah, shout out. Yeah, we should put a
Shout out to
section
Trenton
at the beginning
Heilig.
of this episode as like shout outs. Yeah, the fellas and my girlfriend put one message in there. If there's any women listening to the show, we hope that we're a welcoming environment for you to join our Discord. But it seems as though we're only getting comments from presumably men.
Anyway, so this guy's point that why are other breeds of ape, so he gives the examples of chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, why have they not become extinct, even though he says they don't use tools, but tool-using pre-human hominids outcompeted non-tool users? I would say, as Levi said, these other breeds of ape, they just occupy different evolutionary niches. It's not that they're less evolved, they're just different. And they are getting outcompeted, actually. Like, I think almost all of them are endangered.
Yeah, we're outcompeting the fuck out of every other species on the planet except for like bacteria. It's probably like ants, maybe. Certain species, like those fire ants that are fucking conquering like South America and shit. So he then goes on to start hinting at his proposition for how humans evolved. He says that we know that 1 million years ago, all apes were as intelligent as each other, and the skull capacity of these was 400 to 500 cubic centimeters. But then, the ancestors of modern-day humans, their skull capacity just took off, just went through the roof. And he said that other surviving apes followed the natural evolution of skull capacity only increasing by about 5% in the past 1 million years. Whereas humans, the path from 1 million years ago, dumbass apes following natural evolution to humans, their skull capacity went from 400 to 500 cubic centimeters to about 1,400 in 1 million years. And in this man's telling, that's unnatural because it's fast. Yeah, so here we'll touch on, and this will be a repeating theme of the book. So I suppose we could just sort of like discuss it now. He equates neural capacity, or like cranial capacity, with intelligence. It's not entirely that simple. Like I believe certain species of dolphins like have larger brains than us. Well, at least they have like more convolution. They have more grey matter, cortical grey matter. So there's this like question, like, what is cortical grey matter, like the thing that leads to more intelligence or whatever? Is like, how can that be so if these other species like have more cortical grey matter or like more cranial capacity than humans? Like humans definitely have one of like the highest, but it's not like quite that simple.
No.
So,
and he also talks about. He seems to think that if a brain is just larger in absolute terms, then an animal is more intelligent. In which case, the obvious question would be, well, why aren't, say, blue whales the most intelligent species on the planet? Given that their brains are probably larger than a human being, why aren't they?
Yeah.
Why aren't they gifted of godlike intelligence as compared to human beings?
Well, according to
Ilana Selke.
Ilana Selke, they are more intelligent than humans. They have a planetary communication signal that they've had for millions of years, and they didn't need evolution to talk to each other across the face of the planet. So there you go, Jack.
There we go. We've got the synthesis of Selke and Meyer.
But I had a really interesting thought, because I've been studying, as listeners, long-time listeners of this podcast will know I really like David Deutsch. And I am studying theory of computation at the moment at university, which is very good. And I have realized that, like, how do I put this? Like computational universality is kind of like a 0 or 1 event. There isn't like a gradient. It's like once you achieve computational equivalence with a Turing machine, which the human mind the human brain contains it. In my studies, this was not raised, so I think this might be like something really worth looking into. But like, there must be some part of the human brain that has the correct electrical structure to run a Turing machine, to run basically a machine that's equivalent to a Turing machine. In which case, it's universally equivalent to all other Turing machines, and that is like the part of the human brain that gives us our ability to like do general problem solving. My suspicion is that it would be in like the prefrontal cortex somewhere, obviously, which means that like, you know, for a whale, most of their brain is probably just being used for like coordination of like their body, essentially. And like in humans, like large parts of our brain are just for like image processing and, you know, like controlling the body's movements and stuff. But there only needs to be like one part of the of like the brain that has achieved universal computability. And that's what happened at some point. And once that happens, that's it. It's like game over. We've got a human. And it can start like thinking any thoughts outside of just the limited predefined thoughts that were encoded into its genome.
It's almost like this idea of signal transduction, how you can take a signal from one source and turn it into another sort of signal. So we can transduce signals that are intelligible to us. So say a more trivial example would be, say, human beings can't see infrared. We can't see that spectrum of light. However, using tools, we can signal transduce that and then, say, represent it in natural light. So say night vision.
Represent it.
Say if you're looking at
form that
heat,
we can perceive.
Yeah, you can represent it in natural light. Similarly, we can take concepts that human beings don't intuitively understand, like, say, quantum field theory. Humans just don't intuitively understand that because it's so far outside of our everyday experience. But using tools that we've made, mental tools like mathematics and modern physics, we can actually transduce that into a language that humans can understand and then use it to manipulate those things and build more tools using that. So yeah, it's not about, say, how large a brain is or the amount of cortical folding or something like that. There's some part of the brain or some emergent property of all the different parts of the brain interacting that gives it this Turing completeness that then allows you to transduce signals that you wouldn't be able to understand using mental tools you've devised to make them intelligible, which gives humans this crazy sort of flexible intelligence. Anyway, that was a...
Yeah, it's amazing.
That was a...
And...
Yeah.
No, it's super interesting. It's much more interesting than the book. So I guess this gets to the point that this is not an area that Jack and I are experts at. This is just something that, like, we like to talk about. It's interesting. But two, like, this is not well understood. Like, if you ask me, based on my understanding of computer science and neuroscience, I actually think that we're a long way away from from understanding this stuff. And even in a modern context, we don't really, like, even if you listen to somebody like Joshua Bach, the alien man who's just like mega intelligent, like he brings up a lot of cutting edge ideas about this stuff. And like lots of people still don't disagree. I mean, still don't agree with like how exactly should we conceive these things? And to think that this cunt, Oskar, knew what the fuck that he was talking about question 50 years ago. Answered this groundbreaking question. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. How about some more problems with evolution? So he sets up more straw men that scientists say and then burns them down. So he says, for example,
throws thermite on them.
He says that the commonly accepted theory of human evolution designed to keep humans on this pyramid and keep them within the natural order. One such claim of this theory is that that standing on two legs is intimately connected with intelligence. He says that scientists say that standing on two legs, having no fur coat, and using your hands, those things are intimately linked to intelligence, which they're not. I don't know, suppose someone doesn't have hands. Like, they are as intelligent as someone with hands, they just don't have hands. Suppose someone, say, is in a wheelchair and can't stand up. They are as intelligent as someone not in a wheelchair. It's these things aren't related to intelligence, but he insists that scientists are saying that they are, and then he gleefully disagrees with these obviously dumb statements that he's ascribing to capital S scientists. So in terms of standing up, he says, he says standing up would only be a survival advantage for, say, hunting on the African savannah if you had grasses that grew exactly to human eye height. Because if they grew above eye height, then standing up wouldn't make any difference because you still couldn't see prey or predators. If it were below eye height, then why would you need to stand up above it? QED. There was no evolutionary pressure for standing on two legs. Similarly,
and also, why didn't the other monkeys? Why didn't the other monkeys start running around the grassland as well, Jack? Huh?
Exactly.
Chimps, gorillas, they're still in the forest. Fucking grassland, man. Why aren't they up here running, fucking building Ferraris and?
Exactly. He says
with us.
If the forest disappeared because of the climate, then it did not disappear only for those apes which were later to become man, but for all the others too. But then all apes, chimpanzees, gorillas and orangutans would find themselves on grassy plains. So what he's saying is, if say, pre-human hominids lived in forests, climate change happened, those forests became grassy plains, why didn't every single creature living there start standing on two legs?
Why didn't all of them? In fact, but here's the thing, right? Like, okay.
So he goes on to say,
there's so many fucking things wrong with this. It's ridiculous.
There should be no forests at all, because the most obvious thing to do would be for these apes to retreat with the forest, to stay in the forests. To which I would say, yes, some of them did, because there are still apes which live in forests. Like, he's like just the ones describing what happened.
But
all of those ones.
One of the things that I was thinking about was, like, why didn't you choose what's that word? Is it brachiation? Is that brachiation?
Yeah.
Especially arboreal locomotion. Yeah, that's right. The way that monkeys swing through the trees. Like, like maybe our ancestors, presumably, if we were forest-dwelling apes at some point, our ancestors were brachiating apes, or pre-ape things. Why, like, if you just take his thinking, but just asked it as if a chimp was asking it, and the chimp was like, well, why aren't these humans, like, brachiating like us? Like, he's picked intelligence because it's like an outstanding, like, feature of humans. But it's as if intelligence is like the thing that evolution should optimize for. But why didn't he ask the same question of
teleological end,
brachiation, or being able to digest bamboo or something? Like,
exactly.
Those are perfectly suitable for many apes in their environment to have to be able to do those things.
Yeah, exactly.
But we don't fixate. He hasn't fixated on those other things that those other apes are doing.
Yeah. So this is my theory. My theory is that when he was younger, a handsome scientist stole his girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
And that has motivated his intense hatred of science. Whenever he talks about how much he hates scientists, what he's really imagining is this one scientist, this hairless, well-spoken, intelligent scientist who took his girlfriend from him. And as we go through the book, I will provide more pieces of evidence for my girlfriend theft theory of Oskar Kiss Maerth's evolution.
Oh, I've still got Discord open. Whoops.
So,
another
thing. So he disputes that standing up on two legs.
Jack, somebody just
with
arrived in the Discord. Yo.
Excellent.
Get in it.
Read out their name and give them a shout out.
His name is Keon, and he just goes, gang, gang.
That's the sort of in-depth discourse that we at Book Club from Hell strongly endorse. He also disputes that being manually dexterous is intrinsically linked to intelligence and is a natural part of human evolution. He says, in spite of these completely free and dexterous hands, not a single breed of ape has been stimulated in the course of the previous 20 million years to produce even the most primitive tool. So if free hands were supposed to cause cleverness and lead to tool production, why did this possibility lie dormant in all breeds of ape for 20 million years? And why is it still dormant in present-day great apes, even though they have free hands? So again, it's having free... I agree with him. Having free hands doesn't make you intelligent, and it's not a necessary precondition for intelligence.
Being generous, what was the intellectual climate like back in the 70s? So this is published in 72, right? Something like that. 74? Yeah, something like that. And so it's like 50 years ago. And there are a lot of open questions. There still are a lot of open questions. In fact, if we're at the beginning of infinity, there's shitloads of open questions, and there always will be. And but the open questions that people in his time were dealing with 50 years ago were different. And maybe they were really still thinking like, okay, what causes intelligence? Is it, and maybe they're just a bunch of people putting out ideas, I imagine, as people do, saying like, oh, well, what are other distinct things about humans? Like we're very dexterous and we've got fine-grained control over things with our hands that enables us to do things like writing, tool creation and manipulation. Maybe it's our like central binocular vision, something. And like maybe there's just a lot of ideas floating around about like, well, are these things, did they come along with the ride or were they like coincidental? Could you have another species like I don't know, like an octopus-like species, like some H.P. Lovecraftian,
which is really interesting because it's just a totally different form of intelligence, cephalopod intelligence.
It could be that like an octopus, it's got enough fine motor dexterity and motor control to like do some interesting stuff. Maybe an octopus species could like hit that universality of intelligence, right? And it's not the fact that we have these other particular sets of features. And so maybe he was responding to some of these other things that were in the scientific zeitgeist, potentially.
Maybe, but he still fucked it up. So, for example, there are examples of tool use. Like chimpanzees do use tools. They're very primitive. Now, do they copy in comparison to us? But he says, why did they not produce even the most primitive tool? So he's making a very concrete statement, and his threshold is making any tool, no matter how primitive. And chimpanzees do that. For example, they get straight sticks and bend them in such a way that they can put them, I think they put them into anthills and pull out ants and eat them. Or termite mounds.
Yeah, I've seen it. I love it. I love watching
so
monkeys.
They do use tools. And this is a very common theme with this book, where he'll make a very concrete statement that you can actually just say, no, this is factually false.
It's incorrect. I've seen one. Hence, my favorite tool use that I've seen amongst a primate is seeing those lemurs licking they lick centipedes to get high. Does that count as a tool? They're using the centipede as a tool to get high.
Yeah, so that's wrong. And then he says, oh, why do these creatures have free hands, but they're not using tools? To which you say, well, they are using tools. Then why have they not become more intelligent if they have hands? To which I would say, having hands is not a necessary or sufficient precondition for the development of further intelligence or of general intelligence. So that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all. It's just not. He's tried strawmanning scientists, but has ended up just not making any sense in his response to the really absurd claim he ascribes to scientists.
So this sounds like a good point to pause, Jack. What do you reckon? I should have dinner now before it gets too much later. So where were we?
Where were we? We were definitely complaining about.
We were complaining about something in this fucking.
I think we were complaining about how he's been lining up these arguments made by strawman scientists and knocking those theories down. The wrong-headed scientific theories about how humans naturally evolved from chimpanzees or something rather than unnaturally evolved. We've talked about how he says that scientists say that standing on two legs was because humans evolved in grassland, and how standing on two legs and using hands was a necessary precondition for intelligence.
But there's so many levels of, so many heights in the grass.
Yeah, exactly. And unless the height of the grass were perfectly at the eye level of a human of standard height, then that obviously makes absolutely no sense at all, and humans couldn't possibly have evolved naturally.
Didn't humans used to be shorter, quite a bit shorter?
I think so. That's probably in part due to nutrition.
Because we have higher, better nutritional diets. In the last few hundred years, people are taller.
Yeah.
So you need grasslands that are suitable for the standard height of a nutritionally deficient proto-human.
Exactly. He really likes fur coats and doesn't like hairlessness. So my theory about how a scientist stole his girlfriend, I imagine this scientist didn't have much body hair.
Are you imagining a Lex Luthor type?
Yeah.
Just cue ball head scientist.
So
comes, steals his girlfriend, talks about how he's the alpha male, and this is human evolution.
Yeah. Well, Oscar...
Maybe it was Bronze Age's dad or something.
Yeah, an anesthetic hairless man. Oscar says that... So to find the truth of human origins, we need to look at the differences between humans and apes rather than the similarities. He says that scientists obsess over the similarities between humans and apes, but we've got to look at the differences. No one before has thought of doing this, but he's narrowed down the differences between humans and apes. And I think he really seems to think that you had chimpanzees and those turned into humans rather than chimpanzees and humans sharing a common
I think that's
ancestor.
exactly what he thinks. I think that's exactly what he fucking thinks, mate.
The differences are chimps have a fur coat. Humans are able to copulate at any time rather than there being female specific, or say sex signs that females demonstrate, say once a month. Intelligence, so humans are more intelligent. And of these, first of all, he starts complaining about fur coats. So he's a big fan of fur coats. He says these are so much better than any clothes.
He says a lot. He makes a lot of outrageous
that humans
claims
have.
About
he says,
the pros of fur coats.
He says, tight, constricting clothing reduces one's ability to think to an undreamt of degree and gives rise to unwelcome states of mind and to irritability, impatience, and aggressiveness. Anyone wearing tight shoes is aware of this. So, apes lost their fur coat. And why did this happen? Because clearly a fur coat is so much better than not having a fur coat. Because a fur coat regulates your body temperature and your body's water content. Without a fur coat, you lose all of your heat and die immediately, lose all the moisture in your body and die immediately, unless you wear clothes. Additionally...
And it protects you from the sun?
Yeah, it protects you from the sun. It adjusts to the size of your body. So your fur coat
It's adaptive.
will change length depending on how large you are, whereas clothes can't do that, can they?
Like the most advanced pair of yoga pants ever.
Provides
Just
camouflage.
adjusts to the size of your butt.
I mean, I don't know what
And it's
I don't know what the
naturally
fur coats of
self-cleaning.
people living in Northern Europe when it snows looked like, but they must have been white.
Amazing. White. Pearly
Yeah.
white. He had this bit where where's the quote from? Somewhere. It's in the same section. But he said, he was like basically saying, and I think he says it somewhere else in the book as well, like, yeah, apes are clean. Apes are real clean.
Yeah.
And he says, any ape living in freedom will always be found to bear an exceptionally clean, healthy, and odorless skin, although he never has to bath. Whereas stinky humans, we don't have a natural fur coat. We need to bathe.
Yeah.
And in a later part of the book, I'll just mention it now because on theme. He also talks about like underarm hair,
and he hates
and, like, how humans have like wacky underarm hair, and again, just another example of us being stinky, needing antiperspirant stuff. Whereas apes, they smell fine, they're perfectly clean. His argument was like the dirt on their skin gets wet from sweat or whatever, and then goes up into the fur, and then when they dry out, it turns to dust and it blows away.
Yeah. And dear listener, we will get to the brain eating.
It's this guy.
We'll get to the brain eating, but what we're doing, we're collecting a group of what scientists, capital S scientists, refer to as progress or adaptations, but what are in truth maladaptive. We are collecting a series of maladaptations.
Deficiencies.
To build tension, to build narrative tension, to get you excited for the grand reveal. Because he has a unified theory explaining why we have all of these deficiencies. You will find out shortly. But yeah, back to the fur coat.
Stinky humans.
Stinky humans. Well, the reason why we have pubic hair and underarm hair, but are otherwise hairless, besides, say, the hair on our heads, and if you're a man, the hair you grow out of your face. I think it was something like, so sweat collects in your armpits and your groin, and it sits there and rots in humans without a fur coat. The sweat itself rots and causes painful sores, but you have this underarm hair to wick away the sweat. That's why it appeared.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Whatever. I don't know why.
This is where he starts using. Well, I don't either, but presumably it's for a good reason.
Presumably to stop sweat rotting and causing painful sores.
He also started using this word, I think, in this section. We should start doing a favorite word. Like, what's the favorite word of this author? Or like, what word did we learn from this author? This guy loves this word, atavistic.
Atavistic, yeah.
Atavistic. Atavistic. Everything's atavistic. This atavistic throwback. So atavistic is like when an organism displays, say, like some feature from its sort of like ancestral past. So in this section, he talks about like children, like in utero, they might have a flourishing of like full body fur hair, and then like in most babies, it goes away before they're born or soon after they're born. And he's saying this atavistic throwback, and in fact, there's a condition where this never goes away, and it's like this pathological condition where these people have like essentially like fur coats, sort of. Yeah. And it's pretty wild, actually. It's pretty weird.
I don't know if you have a fur coat.
And so he keeps. I don't know if that's true, but is it? I mean, I'm happy to fact check it, but I think that does happen.
Really?
I think that might have been a part where he's not bullshitting. Yeah, but I can double check. But anyways, I'll double check now. But besides that, he just keeps on using this term. Like, I think every chapter from here on, he'll like call something an atavistic throwback.
Yeah, and in this section, he keeps saying that scientists claim that hairlessness and intelligence are intrinsically linked. He goes so far as to say, in refuting this commonly held scientific belief,
it's called lanugo. Lanugo. That's what it's called.
Okay, interesting.
During fetal development, your baby will start to sprout fine body hair called lanugo around 22 weeks of pregnancy, and will usually be gone by the time they're born. Yeah. Although some babies it doesn't.
Interesting. So he actually did say something correct.
He said something that's not complete fucking bullshit.
in constructing this straw man, saying that all scientists claim that a loss of body hair is an intrinsic part of human intelligence, he says, bravely disputing this point, man could be just as clever with a coat of hair as he is naked. I must concur. I must agree with that. That the presence of a fur coat and intelligence are in fact not correlated. One actually does not have a bearing on the other one. I will concede this point. So after complaining,
am I making this up in my head, or does he make some point about like nerdy hairless scientists somewhere later in the book, where he actually has a stab at scientists for being hairless?
I think so. He
am I making
really
that up in my head?
likes.
I feel like he made a snide remark about scientists basically being betas.
Yeah, about the hairless scientist who stole his girlfriend. He goes on to say, so the first great loss, or the first thing that evolution, natural evolution, cannot explain, is why humans lost a fur coat. And look, I don't know why we don't have a fur coat, why we just have some fur on our heads. But probably not because...
Well, you need to explain
probably
it, Jack.
not because pre-human hominids started eating brains. I don't think that's the case. Anyway, the next thing that he says...
He's lining up the ball to smack it through the goal.
The next thing he says that can't be explained is that females have lost sex signs. So in a lot of animals, females will only be fertile, or you will only be able to impregnate them at certain times. And this isn't the case in humans. Humans can have sex whenever and conceive whenever, if both people are fertile. He says that scientists also claim that this is a sign of progress, which I wasn't aware of. Like, I don't think it's progress to or from anything. It's just how human reproduction works. And he says that this is a terrible thing because it means that male humans expend sexual energy all the time and are always fighting over access to women. And
it's very mechanical.
Yeah, and he links this to overpopulation. He says that basically because there aren't set times of the month that humans will reproduce. He says basically humans just reproduce all the time without thinking of anything else. There's just constant warfare for access to sex. And that...
Yeah, because what was it? It was apes can tell.
Yeah.
Their estrus cycle is physically very obvious with other primates and other mammals, whereas with humans, not so obvious. So men just trying to get it all the time.
Which is not entirely untrue. He says, this loss too hit human beings hard. As man's drive towards sexual activity did not lessen, he at first had intercourse indiscriminately at any time with any woman. What stopped this was the advent of marriage. You hear that? Without marriage, humans have sex indiscriminately, any time with any person until you get married.
Like bonobos.
Exactly. And
like bonobos.
As any person who has lived in any human society knows, this is the case. That it's a free-for-all orgy until you get married, and then it stops.
And I have in my notes, it says, I wrote a note to myself, did this piece of shit start a sex cult? And I said, why is it that pseudoscience crazy men are always attacking the institution of marriage and like talking about polygamy and stuff? It was like, is this just a coincidence? Like fucking Terence McKenna, fucking Poseidus, like they're always going on about this they're trying to take down the institution of marriage.
Exactly. He's
I just think it's a strange coincidence.
He's picked a few human institutions that he really takes issue with. So he doesn't like tight shoes and tight pants. And he doesn't like marriage. He basically says that marriage arose when human females stopped displaying sex signs, basically to stop massive overpopulation, just humans having sex all the time at the expense of everything else. And so he says...
Which, again, he just doesn't know what the fuck...
He says that marriage is deeply unnatural because of this. And he says, the polygamous ape, which previously had been able to associate freely with all the females of his group, manifesting the signs of fertility, put a chain round his own neck. Now, I don't know much about, say, how chimp troops work, but I do know that it's the alpha male of the troop who gets access to sex. And if subordinate males try to have sex, they tend to get expelled, beaten up, or killed. It's not this free love paradise that Oskar seems to think it was. Similarly, not all human societies have marriage in the way that it's thought of in Europe or European adjacent societies. You do have polygamous societies. It's just, well, it's the problem that we have with many things in this book. It's just simply not true.
In fact, maybe even before Christianity, was actually, I don't know enough about history, but I wonder how common polygyny actually is as a structure of marriage. It doesn't seem like it's that uncommon when I read about other cultures.
I think it's very common. So if you have
I have no
a
idea.
very powerful man in society, that they'll have several women they keep. I'd say it's
harems. I mean, even the Bible, Solomon had a harem, didn't he?
I don't think it's at all uncommon. I do think, though, over time, you probably do get a selection pressure for monogamous or serial monogamous societies, given that societies which have polygyny, you tend to have a large number of young men without female partners, which is just a huge source of instability in any society. Young men without girlfriends or wives are just bad news if there are a large enough number of them.
Yes. And I wanted to make a point before that with regards to the overpopulation thing, he just hasn't thought his point of view through very much. Because there's plenty of times when, it's not like nature has this goal of having a perfect population level for each species, and then we just fucked it up. And the visible estrus cycles of other primates is how they keep their own population in check. It's no, it fucking doesn't. No. There's examples abound of when, for whatever reason, a species within a particular area will just have a population explosion.
Yeah.
And they might, fuck things up for themselves and then, have a population crash or whatever. But that's, it happens all the time. And whether or not that species has visible estrus, I don't imagine it plays into it at all. Even a single
There's
bit.
not this intelligence or intentionality overlying nature that says, okay, well, there are meant to be this many of this particular animal, and they have these particular aspects to their reproductive cycle that limits their population. No, an animal wants to expand the number of its descendants.
Would you say that an animal wants to take up open space?
You mean in Bronze Age mindset?
Expand into open territories. Has a will to space.
It is also interesting reading this at a time when we're facing down a demographic
the references
crisis
that we can make are just so fucking absurd.
But we're facing down a demographic crisis in the year 2022. So throughout most of Europe, the population is going to decline over the next few years. In China, it looks like, if at least leaked statistics are anything to go by, the population is meant to halve or something by 2050, 2060.
That's fucking cool. And the number of people who will be over the age of 60. And so you have this massive flipping of okay, well, there's all these people who can't work anymore. Or at least even if they do work, they're not as productive. And then a ridiculously small younger population of just what do you expect these younger people to do? Well, they're just going to subsidize. Well, not subsidize. It's not what I mean, but I mean, help pay for this large population, but it's going to cause huge issues. But that's happening all over the world, and we don't have enough people. We need to get breeding.
Not enough young people, yeah. So there's a huge...
Like Australia at the moment is trying to open up immigration. Like people are like, hey, we need more workers here. Mm-hmm. There's all these industries that are like don't have enough workers, and pressure get immigration in, fellas.
Yeah. So anyway, he's
from Nairobi.
He's definitely right about how the loss of the fur coat and the loss of female sex signs are regressions, clearly unnatural, clearly evidence of something funny going on with human evolution. Human evolution is not according to the cosmic order. He does say, however, no creature on Earth is in opposition to its own natural development or the consequences of it. So if man did establish something against which he periodically rebels, this happened not because he was more intelligent, but because he was forced into it by necessity, brought about by an unnatural cause. What's this in reference to? This is in reference to, say, the loss of a fur coat forcing us to wear clothes, these unnatural, tight, constricting clothes that cause irritability and aggression, tight shoes, institutions like marriage, which are clearly unnatural, he says, because people cheat on each other. People will use prostitutes. Clearly.
Married men will use prostitutes. It's like, you're married. Why are you using a prostitute? You're lying to yourself. You're lying to society.
So clearly, from the fact that
I'm still not sure I fully follow what he's saying, though, Jack.
No, this guy strikes me as... You know how there are some people that no matter what you say, they will disagree with you. Not merely disagree with you, but vociferously disagree with you. Almost take personal offense at
I don't know what you're talking about.
saying.
I don't know anybody like that, Jack.
This guy is just the extreme of that. So no matter what you say...
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Jack. I think this guy isn't like that at all.
Yeah, but you're not acting as if you're personally wounded by it. You just get...
I am personally wounded by your accusations.
It's just he disagrees with everything and seems to take it as such a personal affront.
Mm. Yeah, that is straight. You make a good point, actually. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe some cue ball scientist stole his fucking girlfriend.
Yeah. I reckon that's it, because also once we get into him talking about women and how women take an inordinate amount of pleasure in the sexual act, which is unnatural, I can't help but think, yeah, your girlfriend cheated on you. And that's what motivated writing this book.
You've seen deep into this man's soul.
He is so torn up by the fact that women enjoy stuff.
I didn't pick up on this, but now that you're saying it, like, maybe you're right.
The pieces are falling into place. So
I've got so many highlights in this. Is this where?
He's got this thing. So loss of fur, loss of female sex signs. Finally, the third thing that evolution or natural evolution just can't explain is the rapid increase in human brain size. Because he says, basically each creature is provided only with such attributes and abilities as are necessary for preservation of self and breed. That's not true. In terms of evolution.
And also, like, who's to say, even if you said that, it's like, who's to say that, like, being more intelligent isn't good for survival? What the fuck are you talking about?
But he seems to think that evolution only provides the bare necessity. Like, the minimum level of some attribute required to make you survive. So say a cheetah should only be able to run just as fast as is required to catch a gazelle, and no faster. And if it were able to run any faster, it would indicate an unnatural evolution.
Well, he would actually call it, he says, deficiency and excess are diseased conditions.
Yeah.
So that cheetah who can run faster than it needs to catch a particular gazelle or to catch gazelles is actually a diseased cheetah. It's running too fast.
Exactly. Running too fast.
Its own good.
What about for a prey animal? Say a gazelle. If a gazelle is able to outrun a predator too much, does that mean it's a diseased gazelle and it needs to slow things down?
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying.
I'm pretty sure that's what he's saying.
For any adaptive arms race between any set of species sharing like an area, if any of them are out of kilter where it doesn't just keep the population equilibriums exactly right, then he's basically saying they have an excess of whatever that parameter
Which
is.
I think as soon as you consider, say, a predator-prey relationship, obviously stops making sense, because wouldn't the predator be selected for if it can outrun, say, the prey? Or if it can catch the prey more easily, wouldn't the prey have a selective advantage if it could escape the predator more easily? No, says this man. They reach an equilibrium point and just stay there. And if you leave it, then it's disease.
Where they're just running. But wait, which one is running fast enough under his model? Like, because if they're running the same speed...
Do you assume there's just a percentage...
Like, who's catching...
What if there's just a percentage chance, say, that a prey animal is caught and eaten by a particular predator?
Maybe they have to, if they're running basically the same speed, over the whole population, it has to be a 50-50. Anytime a cheetah and a gazelle have basically a race, it's got to be a 50-50. And if one of the populations is beating them,
that's
then
unnatural.
That's an excess of speed.
It's probably because they're eating
and it's unnatural.
Or something like that.
And the cheetah, the fast cheetah, is contravening cosmic laws, the cosmic order, and needs to reverse its own eating of other cheetahs or something. I don't fucking know. So if we could start, so we're up to, it's been a long episode. No, we're only about an hour in. But we're up to the end of chapter 2. So just to summarize, just so we can get our bearings, the evidence that something other than natural selection has occurred is that he's given 3 key pieces of evidence that he calls deficiencies and the one excess. The first deficiency is a loss of the coat of body hair. The second deficiency is a loss of sex signs. And the third, which is the excess, is the surplus intelligence. That's his triad for taking down the collapse of natural selection, creating modern humans.
Scientists can't explain these things.
Well, there we he could have ended the book there, really. He would have won a Nobel Prize, but he just... he diluted his impact with the rest of the book, because I'm convinced.
So, for chapter 3, the big reveal,
the empty skulls,
reveals why all of these strange things happened. And I'll open with a quote. One ape discovered that eating the fresh brain of one's own kind increases the sexual impulses. He and his descendants became addicted to brains and hunted for them. It was not until later that they noticed that their intelligence increased as a result. The outcome of this process is Homo sapiens. That's his thesis, is that eating a brain of one's own species is a strong aphrodisiac. You have lots of sex and lots of children, but it also actually increases your intelligence. This is, unusually for this man, a point of fuzziness where in some points of the book he seems to say the increase in intelligence from eating a fresh brain is very minute. You only notice the benefits over many, 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 many generations because the increases in intelligence from eating a brain are heritable. He does not provide a mechanism for the heritability, mind you. In some other places, he seems to say you eat a brain and you immediately just become that galaxy brain meme from a few years ago. Your mind has just expanded instantly. He switches between these two positions based on what's most convenient.
It's one of my favorite memes.
So, the reason why you lose hair, why females of the species lose their sex signs, and why brain size increases, is because. So, for the first two of those points, he says that eating brain affects your pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland is directly responsible for body hair and for female sex signs. In terms of body hair, I guess if I'm going to be extremely generous, he's talking about the hypothalamic pituitary axis, at least in men, affecting testosterone production in the testes and to an extent the adrenal glands, And testosterone production does make you grow more body hair. That is so incredibly generous. The pituitary gland, in reality, like if you change it, I don't think it's going to lead to you having a full fur coat or not. But I'm trying to be nice. In terms of female sex,
I hate the fucking pituitary
Sorry?
gland. Because I hate the pituitary gland. Not explicitly, it's not the pituitary gland's fault, right? The pituitary gland didn't do anything wrong. In fact, in a weird way, because it releases DMT, it's probably the coolest gland. But it pisses me off because it's like a locus, a reoccurring locus of woo-woo nonsense. These fucking new age hippies and these pseudoscience fellas that always bring up the pituitary
they always
gland.
leave out the hypothalamus as well.
It's very strange. I don't know what their fixation is.
Well, it's like saying
it's just an organ, guys.
yeah.
It does its thing.
So what
It's the third
what
eye.
he says is that
It's the seed of the
the
soul.
reason
Namaste.
human beings, because of the pleasurable sex that you get after eating brains, humans became addicted to brains, but eating a brain messes with your pituitary gland. So after eating brains, you very rapidly lose your coat of hair. Because you're eating brains and because eating brains makes you horny, these male and female pre-human hominids chowing down on brains just had sex all the time, and that made females of the species lose their sex signs, and it made their brains grow. Made their brains go really quickly. That's what it does. Humans are having unnatural cannibalistic sex.
Now that we're saying it out loud, this has so much overlap with Terence McKenna.
Except instead of brains, it was shrooms.
It was shrooms or brain. Like, these two totally fucking cooked cunts have basically gone, whoa, humans are weird.
Yeah.
And also they've gone, I really don't like modern society for whatever reason, because this guy doesn't like modern society. McKenna doesn't like modern society. There must have been something our ancestors were doing way back when. Maybe it was something they were eating. McKenna's like, they were picking mushrooms out of the grassland herbivores shit and eating it to get better visual acuity, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The pictorial evidence is incontrovertible. And this guy's like, no. What they were doing was they were shoveling brains down their gullets. and that was making them horny. But both of them make the same argument. Like, yeah, we were eating something in our past that made us particularly horny and made us smart and horny. What makes you smart and horny? Mushrooms and brains.
And so he notes, though, that this cannibalism stopped 40 to 50,000 years ago. Why did it stop? Or at least in most of the world. We'll get into why, according to him, certain races are just much less evolved and intelligent than others. But in most of the world, in the northern hemisphere, brain eating stopped 40 to 50,000 years ago because brain eating makes the brain bigger, but the skull doesn't grow as quickly. And the brain was getting squished inside the skull, causing brain damage and short-circuiting the brain. The human brain actually, like, it's not flush against your skull. It's not compressed inside your skull. It does have enough space.
In fact, when your brain becomes compressed in your skull, it's normally
you've got some serious
really
problems. You stop breathing.
You've got some real issues, and you need to go to the hospital.
Yeah. I feel like nitpicking the factually incorrect statements in this book. We'd just be here all day.
my brain is getting compressed. If you buy what this guy is putting down and you think your brain is too compressed against your skull, maybe you should go and get like one of those drill pieces and jump in a time machine and go back to like medieval Europe and get some bores drilled in the pot.
Yeah.
Release some of that intracranial pressure.
He starts talking about cannibalism as well. So he says that stupid scientists say that, how about I read a quote? At the same time, a highly esteemed group of scholars regards cannibalism as the superstitious and reasonless rite of a primitive religious belief, and they established this without ever having discussed the matter with a cannibal. But what he does, he says, later in the book, he says, I talked to cannibals and they told me that this is why they eat brains. But then even further along in the book, he says, or he admits that, cannibals who eat brains won't actually talk about it because they understand deep down that it's sinful. So I think he's tacitly acknowledging that, yes, he talked to cannibals, but they wouldn't tell him why they ate brains. But then he's already inferred.
Oh, I thought it was more like the cannibal that he was talking to was just like on the down low, and it's like he had to do some like sneaky kind of like, it's cool, man. You know, like I'm undercover. I'm not an anthropologist that's gonna like cramp on you.
No, because this was really unclear. He never says outright that he talked to a cannibal and the cannibal told him why they do this. All he said is that he once ate a monkey brain somewhere in Asia. He once talked to a cannibal, and that cannibals don't talk about why they eat brains. So I'm not sure he actually talked to a cannibal about why they eat brains, because all he said is that he has talked to a cannibal, but he never said what he talked to them about. And then he said, they're really cagey about talking about their brain-eating initiation rituals because deep down they know that this is unnatural and sinful. They won't discuss it with outsiders.
He's all over.
So he says there's extensive fossil record evidence of human skulls having, I think he says that you break through the nose. There's evidence of someone having broken through their nose and scooped out their skull. I don't know if these exist or not, but he says, okay, clearly this is because the pituitary gland is the best bit of the brain to eat if you want to get horny and get more intelligent. Obviously, you want to eat the pituitary gland. You get at that through the nose. He also says you can't have eaten brains for culinary reasons because brains are gross and tasteless.
I do want to call out one thing. I think this is roughly in line where you are at the moment, which is he kind of pulls this card multiple times throughout the book, which is it's kind of a Freudian. It's not Freudian. It's kind of just this psychoanalytic nonsense. And this is the first place that, excuse me, I noted. I said pseudopsychology, some subconscious nonsense, where he tries to like dismiss opposing points of view or whatever because it's just like subconscious. So why don't modern theories of like human development include cannibalism? And he says science holds various opinions concerning cannibalism, but they all have one thing in common: they are just as untenable as the hitherto accepted theories about the origin of man. Most theories willfully gloss over cannibalism. Why? Because in man's subconscious, cannibalism created a feeling of guilt which has been transmitted through heredity to all of man's descendants. Therefore, he instinctively runs away from this phenomenon, oppressed by subconscious guilt, and refuses under any circumstances to see a connection between his own development into man and cannibalism.
Yeah. If I may continue that with another quote. From the very beginning, man has
Go.
regarded this act as sinful. He was killing completely innocent fellow men, generally unknown to him, solely in order to satisfy his sexual urge. On account of this crime, an inherited subconscious sense of guilt has made him feel ever since that the sexual act itself is sinful. Yeah, quite a few people we've read for this podcast do the same thing where they harden the subconscious. They can just basically say anything about anyone, and then if anyone disputes that, they say, oh, no, you're not aware of it, you're doing it subconsciously.
That's an interesting way to put it. I've never heard of harden the subconscious.
It's like practical female psychology. How
fucking bullshit.
They say, oh yeah, all women are just looking to beaterize men and then immediately have sex with other men. And the obvious thing to do would be to ask a woman, is this how you feel? And no matter that woman's answer, the authors of practical female psychology will say, no, it's subconscious. She's not aware of it. And in the same way, this guy, if he's got to get out of jail free card, as soon as you ask any scientist, say an evolutionary biologist, hey, is the reason why you subscribe to these particular beliefs about, say, evolutionary theory, is that because you have a sense of shame, a sense of sin and guilt that your ancestors were killing innocent humans to eat their brains to use as an aphrodisiac to have really fucked up sex? Is that why you believe the things you believe? And they will say, no, I don't reckon. And then Oskar Kiss Maerth can say, no, it's subconscious. You're not aware of it. That's why I'm right and you're wrong.
So it's a suppression. It's
Exactly.
Suppression of...
Exactly.
What is that term that the psychoanalysts use?
Repressed.
A neuroticism.
A neuroticism, yeah.
Repressed neuroticism. Wasn't it? Yeah. Which is why, like, Popper calls out the psychoanalysts and the Freudians. This whole idea, if you can set up get out these trapdoors, these trapdoors to get out of your own, to like basically dismiss your opponent's point of view and create this like unfalsifiable system. Mm-hmm. It's just like, okay, you can just say whatever the fuck you want, and then be like, well, if you disagree with me, it's because, patriarchal denial of this thing, or classist denial of that thing, or subconscious. Like, well, that's not very helpful. It's actually not a very helpful thing to say. If cannibalism had not been practiced until an advanced stage of man's development, I quote, when man already had a bigger brain, one could take it that he was acting under the influence of some hallucination. But as cannibalism began when man was still an animal, it cannot be a senseless act because an animal does nothing unless he derives some benefit from it. What then was the real reason causing a vegetarian ape to eat the brains of his own kind and to continue this strange practice over a period of more than 1 million years up to our own times? Sex.
Exactly. And I love it how he does this, where he just takes as a necessary condition for the question he's asking that humans or pre-human hominids did cannibalize each other's brains. It's like, well, this is an established fact. They all did it. So why?
And then I've got another quote. It's a little bit long. I think it should be fine. It's not too long. Quote. So he says, cannibalism is the cause of human development. The first cannibal apes could not know at the start that eating brain not only stimulated them sexually, but increased their intellectual capacities as well. Well, obviously, because how could they know that before they've eaten it? It was not until later that they discovered the effect on their intelligence. Hey, we've got a positive feedback loop here. He's a systems thinker. Most unfortunately, they discovered also that eating brain caused their own intelligence to grow permanently, and that this lasting effect then became hereditary. Furthermore, they discovered that it was more effective to eat the brains of those of their own species who had themselves already acquired additional intelligence in the same way. So the brains of the cannibals themselves became an ever more highly prized substance of making one clever. So this is like an exponentiating function. Brains became more valuable from generation to generation. He's talking about like the literal accrual of knowledge in civilization by eating brains. Therefore, cannibalism later came to be practiced only among the cannibals themselves. Anthropoids, which were not cannibals, were left in peace as objects of no worth and remained apes.
Exactly. He never provides a mechanism how eating a brain, because eating a brain, if it is to be heritable, must affect the gametes. So say either eggs or sperm. He doesn't say how this happens, but you can assume he's thought these things through. Do you think there's much more to add from this chapter? It's basically the whole chapter is him repeating himself over and over that humans got really horny from eating brains and as a byproduct got more intelligent.
Talks about the full moon. Oh, he says some funny stuff about the cannibals in Timor or whatever. They don't like there being metal.
Oh yeah, metal kills.
So they time the kill with the full moon for whatever reason, and then they don't like metals being. And then he says some stupid stuff about like metals. We only started getting metals like a few thousand years ago, and metals radiate stuff that destroys the like purity or the quality of the brain. He just calls it
brain substance.
He's basically saying that all metals are radioactive.
The brain substances that confer intelligence if eaten are degraded by rays emitted by metals.
And then he's got a pretty hectic picture of a headhunter from New Guinea with like a dude's fucking head, which I found a little bit off-putting and like caught me by surprise.
He's got a few pretty good pictures. I still think the best pictures in this book are the ones where he's got pictures of different human races and then comparing them to different monkey faces. And he's like, oh yeah, this guy looks like this monkey. So they were probably descended from this type of monkey.
Oh, and no, he does have a funny bit that I've got with. The question, why the brain of an old man? So he's talking about I think he's talking about the people in New Guinea. They prefer to eat old men. He's saying, the question, why the brain of an old man was eaten at all, there comes always the same reply. The old men were clever. They had this cleverness in them because they themselves had eaten the brains of many other clever men and had gathered much experience in the course of their long lives. Anyone who had eaten the brain of such a man not only became more clever, but acquired as well the secret knowledge of the man who had been killed.
Yeah, I do
for
remember.
The oftener one had eaten brain, and the more one had eaten of it, the greater one's knowledge became.
Yeah, exactly. And how this knowledge was very highly prized. He says that females, it's always a bit of a red. It's always a bit of a red flag when people refer to women as females. I've noticed a trend, but that females helped drive this sinful act because they would only breed with men who'd eaten brains because they were that much better in bed. Women, as always. Women are responsible for whatever bad thing current author doesn't like.
The other thing that he said that was funny, which was these cannibals also affirmed that not only the intelligence and the physical well-being of the victim transferred,
memory too, wasn't it?
But his boldness and courage, and memories. He said that a bit further back. Therefore, if the victim is a brave warrior or even a chief, the operation will be all the more successful. And then I was like, so is he basically saying like these, like presumably tribes, especially if like is in it historically, are basically finding like the healthiest, strongest, bravest men, killing them and eating their brains? Is that what? It's like, we're going to take the best hunter and we're going to kill him, eat his brains, and then we'll all be great hunters now.
He also says, just offhandedly,
I have a feeling that these tribes, even when they were cannibals, were not doing this. I imagine they were leaving the best hunters alone.
He also says offhandedly that Chinese people eat each other's hearts to gain courage? Look, I'm not an expert on Chinese society, but I've never heard of that.
It's like
Chinese people going around eating each other's hearts. This is an accepted practice.
It's like the Wizard of Oz. Like, all the Tin Man needed to do was fucking stab the shit out of
Dorothy and eat her heart.
Rip her heart out and eat her heart. And no, the lion, the cow,
oh,
the
that's
lion
it.
just needed to eat somebody's heart. That would be such a funny version of the Wizard of Oz to just see the lion just immediately eats Dorothy.
In the next chapter called The Great Changes, he goes a bit more into the effects of eating brains upon human beings. And he's got this quote about love that I quite liked. So, because he's a bit, he seems sort of like a smelly neckbeard in that it's someone who just sits at home and complains about what most people like or what most people do in a very moralistic way, implying that because he doesn't do those things, he is superior. And so because most people like love, he doesn't like it. And he says of love, it was not until after this change, brought about likewise by the changing roles of hormones, as an aside, eating brains changes your hormones, just cause, that the exclusively human physical and emotional longing, which he calls love, came into being. Man considers this kind of love a sign of his superiority vis-a-vis animals, the result of higher intelligence and natural development, even though this love includes the pain of being crossed in love and suicide, even murder motivated by sex. In his literature, the sex-obsessed ape sings the praises of a mortal illness which will set the seal on the inevitable fate awaiting him as a result of overpopulation. And this is where, when he's writing this, he's imagining that handsome, hairless young scientist who stole his girlfriend.
Is this where
This is where love gets you.
Your sort of theory was forming?
Yeah.
Or you started thinking like, wait a
second.
What happened to you, Oscar? Who hurt you?
Like a scientist hurt him. A scientist and a no-good, cheating, sex-obsessed woman who would have been pure
female
if only our ancestors hadn't partaken of brains.
Do you reckon maybe that's why he ran away to a monastery in remote China?
Maybe.
Because he had a broken little heart.
He went MGTOW after his girlfriend cheated on him.
He went MGTOW all the way to
a Chinese monastery to write about brain-eating apes. That's where NoFap gets you.
That's not about as MGTOW as you can get,
and NoFap. His sexual energy wasn't stolen by women or masturbation. Instead, it was concentrated, and he was able to see into his subconscious. He was able to see where human evolution came from.
He cracked the mystery. I think, imagine, okay, if I just try to use my imagination for a second, what would it take for me to just isolate myself in a rural Chinese monastery for months and just write a fucking 200-page book about cannibalism? I think you would have to be in a really, really fucked up place.
Well, more evidence for my girlfriend theft by a scientist theory of the origin of the beginning was the end. He says,
hey, what do you think, audience?
The brain was always eaten by the men. Because of this, men were more deeply affected in their sex life than women, and there has been a greater alteration in what excites them sexually. So in sexual intercourse, men generally reach orgasm sooner than women. You see the pieces falling into place. He couldn't make the distance with his girl. She wasn't satisfied. Do you know who could make the distance, though? A scientist. The scientist that stole Oscar's girlfriend made him go MGTOW and NoFap and disappear into a rural Chinese monastery to write a book about monkey brains.
And he talks about some things that humans do later on in order to alleviate basically premature ejaculation, and one of them is circumcision.
Yeah, to make more sense.
So I'm imagining, what's a population with circumcised penises and a high proportion of scientists? Jack, maybe from Europe, European community. maybe. I don't know.
I'm just saying. Maybe this is where the anti-Semitism comes
in. We really need to get some. We can upload these. So if I do the how funny was that? Yeah, good work, audience. Thank you, everyone. We're very smart. We can actually upload our own ones into this. So now we can have a soundboard.
Oh, nice.
So if we want to upload like
Terence
McKenna saying some funny stuff or whatever. Yeah. So
he's also got this
just a heads up, in the future, we're bringing up the video and audio quality. We're investing $24 a month in Riverside to make these shows much better for you, audience. We're investing in this for you because we fucking love you so much. And we're going to even invest in some high quality sound production, like the sound of Terence McKenna.
He's got this thing. So he didn't only, like most MGTOW people, when his girlfriend cheated on him, he decided that all women were trash. How does he justify this?
Yeah,
well,
that's a pretty common pattern with Red Pill and MGTOW.
Let me tell you. He says, just as the brain, which was always eaten by the men, brought about stronger sexual impulses in them, so it caused higher intelligence, which was passed on more to sons than to daughters. That is why a difference in intelligence exists between man and woman. See?
He doesn't fuck around. He just goes straight up.
She cheated on him. She didn't cheat on him because he couldn't make the distance in bed or because he was an arsehole who does things like writes, the beginning was the end. No. He was cursed by brain eating to be too sensitive, and therefore he came too quickly for her. She was cursed by lower intelligence because only the men ate the brains. So she couldn't see just what a supreme gentleman, what a nice guy he was. She was poisoned by an increase in sexual pleasure caused by brain eating, which no other female animal experiences. See, so much of this book, I think, was written to justify to himself why his girlfriend ran away from him with a scientist, a hairless scientist.
Why he got dumped. Yeah. Somebody left him for a scientist. Yeah, what's fucking cooked about this guy is he's also just obviously such a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the person who translated this into English as a woman, Judith Hayward or something? Could you imagine this poor woman? I mean, I don't know if I feel sorry for her. You know what? Fuck her.
She translated
it. She fucking deserves it. She was translating this, and she was thinking, yeah, I want my name on the cover of this book. Yeah, I'm translating from whatever quality of German or whatever it was written in to basically perfect English.
Doing a good job of it.
Basically, like it is perfect. It is perfect English. And she's thinking, like, yeah, I agree with this man. And I feel sorry if he did actually ever have a partner or a wife. God forbid, he would have just been a fucking train wreck.
She ran away from him
to have a relationship with.
I'm going to die on this.
I pray this man didn't.
This is why the book was written.
Hey man, this is like a meta literary analysis. And I get down with it. I can see where you're going with it.
He does complain about women having too many rights. The book started off as pseudoscience, but rapidly went in basically every direction of everything else we've read for this podcast. It brings in woo-woo. It brings in women have too many rights in society. Yeah. It brings in race mixing is bad.
It brings in race.
It brings in everything. Like, this is the lucky dip of everything that we read about for this podcast.
We should...
He's got this quote about women having too many rights, which is pretty good. So if a society puts political or culture...
Wait.
Yeah.
which bit is pretty good?
Oh, this is...
The part where women have too many rights? Is that what you're agreeing with, Jack?
Yeah, exactly. So when I read out this quote, this is a full-throated endorsement of everything he's saying. So if the society puts political or cultural power in the hands of women as a sign of its progress, or even hands over leadership to them, it is displaying evidence of the individual impoverishment of its men. In such a society, people will be able to distinguish what is important less and less from what is unimportant. The men become effeminate and the women masculine. The sexes will become alienated from each other, and sexual life will assume a condition of chaos. Philosophical thought, art, legislation, a healthy way of life, sensible economic goals, all will disappear, to be replaced by absurd objectives. The downfall of such a society is only a question of time. Why is this happening? So he says, naturally, capital N naturally, there is a big difference in intelligence between men and women. However, our educational system is making men stupider and bringing men down to the level of women. And so women, seeing that men aren't any more capable than them, demand rights. So being immensely generous, I will say, to an extent he is saying, in our society, men and women are as capable as each other. So I will give him, I don't know if even half marks, but say 0.1 marks for, I guess, conceding that in today's society, men and women are equally capable. However, his working to get to that point and the broader context makes it very hard to really credit him with anything
an unbelievably generous interpretation, Jack. Can I read a bit?
Please.
This is, you can stop me because I pulled out a big chunk for this. Men are smarter than women because it is their sons that eat the brains. That's the summary of what I'm about to read. I think you might have quoted a little bit of this already, but there's a bunch of stuff here but I'll just start from the beginning. Just as the brains which was eaten by the men brought about stronger sexual impulses in them, so it caused higher intelligence, which was passed on more to the sons and daughters. That is why there is a difference in intelligence. And then he goes on to say, but the picture alters substantially as soon as it is a question of the spheres of intelligence which came into being, not as a result of pre-cannibal natural evolution, but artificially as a result of cannibalism. In all those intellectual abilities which human beings have achieved through cannibalism, man is superior to woman. The genius of the human species is far more pronounced in man. The supreme achievements in art, religion, physics, technology, indeed even in culinary art, even in the kitchen, were always and still are the preserve of men. The knowledge of all knowledge, philosophy, is masculine domain. Women can learn and understand philosophical ideas. Sure, they can, and even act behaviorally, but they cannot conceive ideas of decisive significance and affect this field. For this reason, all great thinkers, philosophers, and founders of religions were men, and so it will remain. If a woman is exceptionally successful in one of these fields of learning, then there is something wrong with her sex hormones. And last quote. Extreme climatic conditions hostile to the human species, and I think did you quote that one? No, you already said. So that was like the preamble. Extreme climatic conditions hostile to the human species and repressive educational systems, wrong ways of living, and the pursuit of wrong aims as well can dull human genius enormously. First and foremost, that of men. In such a society, women will demand equal rights, and they will be justified in doing so.
Yeah.
Not because they have become more clever, but because men have become stupider. It just went really really sexist really quickly, like kind of out of nowhere. It just went like 0 to 100 of just like just not even fucking around. Just men and women, men are better than women. And the reason is because we eat brains.
Yeah, well, we ate brains. We don't do it anymore. We're not eating brains anymore, and we're educated, so we've gotten stupider. Whereas women, who are naturally not as avid brain eaters as men, should, I guess, naturally be subordinate. I'm pretty sure that's what Mr. MGTOW Chinese monastery monkey brain eater is saying. He's got this good bit about how...
Is there something about China? Oh, no, sorry.
He's got this quote about... So, women are less intelligent. As an aside, he says that women ate fewer brains than men, and also brain eating... The intelligence from brain eating is passed on more effectively to male offspring than female. I talked to my wife about this. Granted, she's not the descendant of brain eaters, so her opinion is naturally less relevant here.
I think it's suspect.
As well as this, she does have a bachelor's degree in neuroscience, so she's also been quite corrupted by education. But we were trying to work out the genetic mechanism by which eating a brain would change your gametes and then be preferentially passed on to male offspring than female. So it must be doing something to the Y chromosome if it's passed on to male offspring. But it must also be doing something to X chromosomes because it is also passed on to female offspring, but it must affect the X chromosomes less. What we came up with was that it probably, so it must be affecting sperm, but probably not eggs for a few reasons. Sperm are continuously produced throughout a male's life. So eating a brain will affect newly produced sperm, whereas women are really born with their life's complement of eggs. They're not producing more of these. So conceivably, a woman eats a brain, it might benefit her as an individual, but her eggs have already been produced. So it's not going to be affecting those. Whereas if a man eats a brain, men are still producing sperm. So it's going to be it's going to affect those sperm somehow. It's going to affect the genetic material in those sperm. And it's going to affect Y chromosomes more than X chromosomes because the Ys are the ones passed on to male offspring. That is the immensely generous and full of holes genetic mechanism and biological mechanism for how intelligence gained through brain eating is passed on preferentially to male rather than female offspring.
Makes sense.
I mean, look, what we've come up with is also easily disputed.
I reckon we should try and write up a paper, submit it to Nature.
Our theory is easily disputed because it's definitely wrong. It's just we were trying really hard to try to reconcile his monkey brain theory,
like some sort of physical
some sort of mechanism. As listeners can hear. So, being married to me is really fun because you get to have these sorts of conversations. It's, hey, Anna, how do you think the monkey brain eating theory?
I think Fee can't stand the conversations. No, she likes it. What do you think?
I've got something I want to discuss with
you. Mine is kind of like, so Fee, I read another book about why men are better than women. Yeah. Just thinking, like, what the fuck?
Just as we've become connoisseurs of anti-Semitism, we've read so many different justifications for why Jews are really bad. We've also become connoisseurs of sexism. There are so many different ways that men can justify disliking women. I will grant Mr. MGTOW Chinese monastery.
Oscar's quite an inventor.
This is an inventive way for justifying why women are trash. This is definitely far on the inventive end of the inventive-uninventive scale of misogyny. It's just still not very compelling.
Yeah, I haven't been... See, the problem... My problem is that, in my studies and stuff, women always just did better than me at university and stuff. It's just always like...
That's because you've become stupid through education as a man.
I I think that makes a lot more sense.
I don't know why.
I think I need to start
if his
eating more brains.
If his theory is correct, though, so education must make women less stupid than it makes men stupider, because men are educated and they become stupider. Women are also getting educated now. So if men and women were equally negatively affected by intelligence, you would expect men to still be much smarter than women, because women will also, by an equivalent amount, get stupider when they're educated. So there will still be an intelligence differential between men and women. But what he's saying is that women and men are now similarly intelligent.
The other thing is that you have to remember
women must
that
be less negatively affected by education than men.
No, but here's the complicating factor with my educational underperformance compared to my female colleagues or female peers is that I am of Australasian descent.
Oh, so you've got this
Australian, and this so I have a smaller brain capacity. And on that note, I will read you a quote
with my
just to bridge this nice nexus. I can't compete with Galaxy White Man Brain Jack over here. Indo-European Jack. I'm going to bring this nexus beautiful. He manages to thread the needle of sexism and racism against Australasian people.
Racism and sexism wasn't present for a while, and then there's a point at which it just goes through the roof.
This is the point. Yeah. This is the point where he said, man did not educate woman imperfectly. He gave her no brain to eat. To bring female intelligence up to the same level as that of man by means of education is just as impossible as to bring the intelligence of an Aboriginal of New Guinea up to the level of that of a Chinese by education. If a race became cannibals 100,000 years later, then members of that race do not need education to raise their intelligence, but 100,000 years of cannibalism. If someone wanted to commit the error of giving women man's intelligence, then women would have to begin eating brain and continue doing so for several tens of thousands of years. Not only their daughters would have been made cleverer by this, however, but to a lesser extent their sons too. As, however, intelligence gained by cannibalism entails for human beings the burden of delusions, there would be even greater chaos. Yep.
So in terms of Australian government policy, do you think so? You know how there are programs at the moment.
Look, Jack, if you want to close the gap between the educational gap between First Nations Australians and the rest of the population educational outcomes, you just need to give us 100,000 years of cannibals.
Do you reckon you could shorten that though? Like, if say the Australian government had a
more brains per lifetime
brain eating program for First Nations Australians, they were like
send like a letter to.
So suppose
the Department
we
of
could
Indigenous Affairs or something.
We work out, okay, what's the number of, say, brains per unit time eaten by so he says
is there a saturation capacity per
is this a saturable process?
Or can if you just eat?
We need to work out how many brains Eurasians were eating, because he says it was the Eurasian continent where brain eating was going on. First, Mesopotamia. He keeps calling it Mesopotamia, even though, like, this predates the existence of Mesopotamia as a political organization. But basically, the Middle East, modern-day Iraq, was where brain eating started, but then rapidly spread through Eurasia, the Eurasian continent. So that's where it happened first. We need to work out how many brains per unit time Eurasians were eating, and then for First Nations Australians to close the gap. So say, what was he saying? You need 100,000 years of brain eating. So if we want to close the gap to a year, you would need to multiply that, the number of brains eaten by unit time by 100,000. So
how many brains would a typical Indo-European or pre-Mesopotamian, whatever the fuck, Proto-Indo-European in Mesopotamia, pre-Mesopotamia, eat in a typical calendar year? Let's say they ate once every full moon. Is it once a month, a full moon, roughly? 12 brains a year. Okay, so
1.2 million brains
over 100,000
per
years
year to close the
1.2
gap.
million brains. But that is spread over many generations, and surely you're not eating a full brain per person per generation. Like each time they kill a person, do they split like one brain between, say, like 5 dudes, right, or something? Just to make it a little bit easier, let's just say it's one brain between 2 dudes. You get a hemisphere each. So now we're down to 600,000 brains. If you want to do it in a year, okay, maybe if we want to do it over the next 60 years, that's only like 600,000 brains, 60 years. What's that? 60,000. That's 10,000 brains. You only need to eat 10,000 brains a person.
Right. 10,000 brains per person.
I reckon that's a sustainable number of brains.
I reckon. So where are you going to get?
Yeah.
Australia would probably need an imperialist border policy to be able to get these brains.
And now
there's
about 1 million Aboriginal people. So there's 1 million Aboriginal people. So we'd need we would need access to 10 billion human brains.
That's how you close the gap.
This is our plan to close the gap.
We just need to secure billions of human brains.
Billions of human brains to feed Aboriginal Australians. Close the gap in 60 years. One lifetime, we can close 100,000 years of cannibalistic gap. We can do it. This is the next moon landing. This is the great Australian calling. You want to make up for the last 200 years of colonization, Jack. You Indo-European. Give me some human brains. The human brain initiative.
I'm going to write a letter to my MP.
My local representative. This is a really good idea. This is a cause I care about.
I know how to fix colonization.
Hey, listeners. Hey, if there's any listeners in any of the colonies, really, we've just had the fucking Commonwealth Games, guys. This is not just an issue that affects Australia. All right. Shout out to New Zealand and everyone else. Although I think, did they have cannibalism over New Zealand? I don't want to be racist to the Maoris. I don't know. Were they? I don't know.
I don't know.
They're a pretty fearsome bunch. They were pretty full on.
Let's just assume that they too will need an intensive brain eating program to close the gap.
How are we going to get these brains? Anyways, that's an implementation detail. We don't need to worry about that right now.
Do you reckon lab-grown... You know how research is going into lab-grown meat?
Does that count?
What if you make lab-grown...
No, that doesn't count, though. No. Because lab-grown brains don't have accrued experience.
They don't have...
Like when I eat the old man,
have accrued prana,
in Timor.
Which was his... We'll get into the woo-woo stuff because that... Don't you worry. This goes really woo-woo really quickly.
Anytime I hear somebody start talking about prana, my fucking brain just switches off. I just want to go to a yoga class and just do some exercise, and then the fucking yoga teacher starts talking about prana.
Yeah, that's why I do. That's why I use YouTube yoga.
Get it out of the way. Yeah, but I like going to yoga class. It's nice to be around people.
I don't have that problem with
so we need to write to the Australian government and maybe get the UK on the hook for this because they brought the conflict here.
It's a classic Australian thing that when good things were done, it was Australians. When bad things were done, it was the English.
It was the English. I like that. Yeah, I like that. So the UK needs to subsidise Australia's feeding Aboriginal people tens of billions of human brains, lab-grown human brains over the next 50 years.
And beneficiaries of this policy don't get a choice. They are going to eat those brains.
Yeah, they need to put it in as like this outlasts the elections, man.
Anyway, now that we've solved colonialism,
moving on.
Where do we go to now? Oh, do you remember that bit where he talks about why black people have flat noses and big lips?
I just can't do it.
I will start it off with a quote.
Go on.
It can be stated as a law that tropical races have a broad, flat nose and a thick upper lip covered with numerous pores, while races from temperate or cold climates have a narrow, long nose and a thin upper lip. So he says, because we don't have fur coats, we can't thermoregulate at all. You just die. So races from cold climates have long, thin noses. You can see my long, thin nose here. That's because it warms
long,
the air
thin Indo-European nose,
and that stops you dying from hypothermia. Whereas
I've got a weird long European nose because I'm a filthy mudblood.
does that mean mixed race people in the Australian brain eating experiment will get proportionally fewer brains?
Do I need proportionally fewer brains? No, don't cut me out, man. This is being Aboriginal is a binary operation. All right. It's not a matter of proportion. I want my share of brains.
Yeah, but then you're going to get brain damage from your brain getting.
You already took my land. Don't take my brains, Jack.
Yeah, but it's for your own good, because he notes that brain eating stopped 50,000 years ago among the Indo-European and Asian races because their brains outgrew their skulls and they started getting epilepsy.
I love the next bit where he goes, and the men of the races of like tropical races, which is again, this is just not true. Generally, do not have any moustache, or if they do, only a very sparse little moustache, and one only at the corners of the mouth. For a full moustache would impede the function of their thick upper lip.
Yeah, and the reason why you have a thick upper lip with lots of pores and with teeth that push the upper lip out is so that you sweat on your upper lip and that evaporates and that cools your body. And without that, in warm climates, you die. Which begs the question, why do descendants of cool climate races not immediately die in the tropics without this thick upper lip sparse hair growing?
Oh my god. He said also that it is noteworthy too that some African tribes living in the hottest and most humid equatorial climates have increased the cooling effect of their thick upper lip by artificial intervention, and still do. They bore a hole in the middle of the upper lip directly under the nose, as this hole is always covered with wetness from the saliva. Constant and rapid evaporation is produced by breathing, and thereby a cooling effect.
This guy's racism is really something else.
It's a very strange racism as well. I've never read anything like this. I was reading this and I'm just like, what fucking planet is this dude on?
It's turbo racism, but from a very weird perspective.
From cannibalism. He started off with cannibalism.
Yeah. He subscribes to this belief that eating certain body parts just makes that body part better. So here, I've got a quote. The principle whereby brain is good for the brain, liver for the liver, and heart for the heart. He goes on to say, scientists have little to gain from finding out why eating testicles affects the sex life. Just does.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. He also goes on to talk about, so I'm pretty sure this guy must have been a vegetarian, because he keeps talking about why meat eating is terrible and it makes you really aggressive and sexual.
Read between. I reckon he was one of those fucking vegan.
Or do you reckon
pretentious?
Do you reckon that so when this scientist stole his harpy of a girlfriend? Do you reckon it, like the first time they met, was it like a barbecue or something like that, and they met each other, say, eating lamb chops or something like that? And from that moment...
This guy's got a lot of hang-ups, man. I don't know. It could be anything.
I reckon meat eating has something to do with his girlfriend running away from him and him going MGTOW into a Chinese monastery.
I reckon maybe his ex was paleo.
Maybe, or keto.
And this is like a reaction. Or keto,
yeah.
And so he's turned vegan.
Yeah.
We actually should see if we can find some crazy vegan literature.
Yeah,
as
we
well
really
while we're at
should. How about we get into woo-woo?
it. Shout out to the vegans. We love you. Keep on listening.
Oh, actually, before we get on to woo-woo, I reckon the scientist who stole this guy's girlfriend was bald, because he talks about bald people. So
Yeah, he doesn't like bald people.
no, he thinks they're sexually voracious. Because energy is stored in the hair. And when you're bald, energy is not being put into that hair, but that energy has to go somewhere. So he says, since ancient times, wise men, including the Christian God in the Middle Ages, have been represented as bald-headed. Baldness was considered as a sign not only of great age, but of wisdom. Moreover, bald men considered themselves as more sexually vigorous than men with hair. Both inferences are correct. The sum of energy, no longer used for growing hair because the hair roots have died away, benefits either the intelligence or the sex urge, often even both. So, poor Oskar Kiss Maerth, who, because his ancestors ate brains, couldn't last longer than 15 seconds in bed to please his girlfriend, who, because of brain eating, enjoys sex too much. This bald, hairless scientist, voracious sexually,
Paleo
plus, keto
circumcised.
plus, this ketotic, sexually ravenous meat eater,
circumcised,
swept her off her feet. And this is why,
with high amounts of testosterone.
This is why Oskar is forever.
This is why he ran away to rural China to a monastery to fucking what's that fucking thing that they do? They like hold their ejaculate in and reabsorb.
Yeah, semen retention.
He was just doing that by himself. Fucking just getting an erection when he saw the fucking local goat walking down the street, walking down the dirt road outside the monastery. Like, damn, that's nice. That's a nice goat. I need it for my semen retention. I can't eat it though because I'm a vegan. And vegans don't eat sexually attractive goats. He's doing Kegels to hold in his urge to fuck the goat.
The next chapter, the damaged brain. This is where the woo-woo comes out. So in the previous chapter, the racism and sexism ramped up, and in this chapter, the woo-woo this is the exponential inflection point. This is where the woo-woo goes through the roof.
Is this 5? You're up to chapter 5. The damaged brain. Oh yeah, this is fun. yeah, he goes nuts.
We run into a problem. So in pre-human apes, the brain was about 4 times smaller than it is in fully evolved Eurasian humans.
Oh, fully degenerate.
Fully brain-eaten, brain-replete humans. The brain is about 4 times larger than in pre-human hominids. However, we're about 1,000 times smarter. I don't know where he gets this figure from or what units he's using to quantify us as being 1,000 times more intelligent than apes, but look, we are.
Yeah, he goes Selkie. He's going Selkie on this one.
So, how do you square this? The reason why you can have a brain only 4 times larger, but 1,000 times, you be 1,000 times more intelligent, is because thoughts are purely immaterial. It couldn't possibly be that the brain has a different architecture. No. Its thoughts are immaterial. That's how it works. However, in enlarging the brain, he calls it the insulation system of the brain was damaged. When he says that, maybe he means myelinated axons, but I don't know. But anyway, the insulation got thinner and thinner, and in the part of the brain responsible for extrasensory perception, it got too thin, and that part short-circuited and stopped working. This is a part of the brain present and functional in every other animal. Every other animal communicates via extrasensory perception, via thought transference, but not human.
He's literally saying that all these other animals are fucking telepathic and communicate with one another telepathically because they have better brain insulation.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what it's saying.
I don't know what to say. Like, at what point did this fucking book jump the shark? I don't know. But the shark has been molested.
He just keeps escalating
and murdered and thrown off the side of a dirt track in a forest. The poor fucking shark's family has put out a news report saying, "We've lost our shark baby." He's all over Channel 9 News. And Oscar's responsible.
I've got a fairly long quote here about the loss of the ASP. So, since losing ASP. Since then, he has had no further insight into the immaterial world in which the origin, the purpose, and the meaning of existence are revealed. He has no longer known, since that time, that he lives in a boundless ocean, the substances of which, spirit, half matter, or matter, combine and work together in harmony and carry forward the meaning of the universe and of life as well. And he no longer knows that the perception of this eternal harmony engenders a feeling of joy, the savour of which in itself makes life already worth living. And he no longer knows that he, like all living creatures, is part of all these substances, and that his true self is the most valuable substance, his spirit, which is eternal and indestructible, just like matter and all other substances. In this chapter, he proposes a full-blown cosmogony and order of the universe. So basically, there are four substances of the cyclical universe. There is matter, half spirit, and spirit. And the universe begins each cycle being completely spirit, and some portion of that spirit degrades into half spirit. Some portion of that half spirit will degrade into half matter. Some proportion of that half matter will degrade into matter. Once there is a certain amount of matter in the universe, the spirit component of the universe will wipe everything away, convert everything back into spirit, and the cycle starts again. He doesn't explain how he came to this conclusion, but he just knows. And basically,
I think he's stealing this from some probably fucking mashup with like Taoism and whatever other stuff that he saw while he was over in China.
And basically,
and he's just mashing it in.
As far as I understand, matter is what we as brain-eating or post-brain-eating apes perceive. It's all we perceive. Half matter connects neural impulses to half spirit, and in half spirit, our thoughts and memories reside. Half matter is this sort of bridge between those, as far as I'm aware. Half spirit is also the prana that we breathe in and out. It is the life force of everything, I think. And then spirit is the foundational substance of the universe. I'm not sure if I'm correctly conveying this guy's...
And at this point, do we need to explain, or like, do we need to... I hope that everybody just realizes that we're just going to... Jack and I completely disagree with this. And so we've probably covered a good chunk of like, oh, he doesn't understand evolution and stuff. Now we can just say the rest of the book from here on in is just fucking wacky.
It keeps escalating. Every time you think he's achieved peak wackiness, he'll bring in, oh, here are the four substances of the universe.
And how they enable animal extrasensory perception.
Yeah. No, fuck it. No, so in life exists to bring together these four substances. These four substances are separate, except in life. The point of life is to have these four substances together in one being in harmony. But because human beings ate brains and lost contact to the spiritual world, we no longer fulfill this purpose of life. And I think because initially I was having a really hard time working out what he meant when he said that our evolution was unnatural. I think what he means is that we decided to become more intelligent by eating brains rather than just abiding by the natural order And we, in doing so, subverted the natural order. We lost contact to this immaterial world. I think that's what he means when he keeps talking about how human evolution
it's almost
is
like
unnatural.
it's almost like an Evolian argument of losing connection to the world of being.
Yeah, because
but it's like slightly more.
What he keeps saying is
granular. There's 4 levels.
At least within the context of his proposed physics, us eating brains and becoming more intelligent doesn't violate physical laws. So I would have considered it to be natural. But that's the problem with the term.
Yeah, and I would have also considered that in the first place it was an animal that ate, like our pre-human ancestors. They were not aware that what they were doing was a sin, nor were they aware that it would make them intelligent. They were just eating it because it made them horny. So how was it unnatural in the first place?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm still not entirely sure what he means when he says it was unnatural. All I know is that unnatural equals bad in his telling. So it was bad evolution.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got this stuff about prana, how the universe is filled with a cosmic energy, which is immaterial life energy, that all living creatures breathe in, absorb through certain nerves situated in the nose in most animals. And yeah, that's prana.
Have you seen the breathing?
Half spirit.
Have you seen the breathing? You do the breathing.
Yeah,
nose.
I do that some mornings.
And then breathe out the other. Yeah,
feels really nice.
No, it's fine. Like you can do it for like diving and stuff, for the physical effects. But it's when people say it's like moving the prana around, it's like, no, you're breathing. You're breathing in your nostril.
Yeah, and in most animals, all animals except humans, their spirit, the spiritual component of that animal, can imbue this prana, this half spirit, with information and then broadcast it. And other animals attuned to the same, he seems to conceive of it like a radio transmitter and receiver. Other animals of the same species or of similar intelligence can receive these signals.
It's like truckers, the trucker radios. Yeah. They're just like tuning in. Hey, this is Jack. I'm traveling up Highway 55. It's a beautiful day out. Life is great. Yeah, just saw some cops. Everybody be aware. Also, there's some predatory eagle vultures circling the troop. Hey, everybody get back to the forest. Run away from the prairie, little monkeys. That was a mashup of Jack being a trucker monkey.
Yeah, that's it.
In the prairies of Africa on the edge of the forest, telepathically communicating to the rest of the monkey tribe.
Yeah, and he says that so our ability to send and receive these thoughts isn't completely gone. When we think bad thoughts, they embed in the subconscious of other people and make them feel worse.
Yeah, this is more him just getting fucking cheated on, isn't
it? Yeah, I reckon. He does say, though, that human beings before about 50,000 years ago, they were much more intelligent from eating brain, but they hadn't short-circuited the ESP part of their brain yet. So these were godlike creatures, and life exists on other planets. Though the creatures on those other planets are hyper-intelligent and psychically adept, and so we were communicating telepathically with those creatures that we thought of as gods. That's where our idea of God comes from.
Incredible.
From telepathically communicating with aliens. But then...
Truly incredible.
Yeah, then we overshot it. We flew too close to the sun. We just ate too many brains.
Icarus was smashing not smashing ice cream, smashing brains. Sorry, I was just thinking about eating ice cream when we finish up this Zoom call.
I'm so looking forward to eating it. I haven't eaten for like 67.
What, you're on like hour 67 or something now?
Yeah, day 3.
I'm on hour 0, and I'm going to continue being on hour 0 for another hour. Icarus loved brains. And is that what his explanation was about, like Buddha and Jesus and stuff? We're talking.
Yeah, basically. So he says in a few people, even today,
communicating
or in
with
more
the
modern
other
times,
planets.
you'll have some people whose ESP circuit is still working, and there'll be people like Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, who can perform what we think of as miracles, but what actually are very natural things that all animals can do except humans. He actually...
Is he fucking, like, why aren't there, like, chimps or, like, other animals just walking around curing leprosy? You know? What
does this entire...
like, fucking little horny bonobo just goes over and, you've got ravenous skin disease, or you're blind. The blind bonobos are curing each other.
Oh, you'll love this.
I would like to see all of the New Testament turned into, like, bonobos and chimps, like an animated series of Jesus being a bonobo.
This passage is quite a long one, but this just gives an impression of how fucking bizarre this book gets. Once you crack, say, the halfway point, it's already bizarre in the first half, but then in the second half, it just leaves the planet. So he says...
Literally, like, astral projects to another planet.
The statement that the greatest speed is the speed of light is not correct. On the contrary, the greatest speed is that of immaterial thought rays. The speed is absolute. The time required to overcome any given distance is nil, and even matter is no barrier for it. Time is just as infinitely short as it is infinitely long, and the infinitely large is identical with the infinitely small. The sensations of time and space are sensory deceptions to which all living creatures are subject, and which are different in the different spheres of the universe. Every effect, even a seemingly chance one, has a cause. Every cause has an ultimately spiritual origin, because the origin of all things is spirit. Between cause and effect, no time exists. Even if the effect is perceived by living creatures, only after some time has elapsed. As they are subject to sensory deception, 2 times 2 are 4, even when no one undertakes to multiply them. For each cause, the outcome is already there. The spiritual impression of all results is located in the infinite cosmic sea of prana, to which I would like to add,
Amazing.
That means that humans have always reached this point by eating brains, because there is a spiritual cause for these things. So spiritually, we are compelled to have eaten brains and reach this stage. Humans have reached this point for some deeper spiritual purpose that I guess this guy just overlooked. As well as that,
by the prana.
As well as that, because he seems to be saying the universe exists almost as this Parmenidean whole, this unchanging oneness. Human beings have always eaten brains. Human beings will always eat brains. Universe. Human beings are always eating brains. Human beings are always on the other side of having eaten brains. So it's not unnatural at all. It is an immutable part of this unitary universe. In this section, he has just undermined his entire 200-something page book. The dumbass, like this totally validates everything he said. If this is the case, then human beings had to eat brains. This had to happen because it is serving a spiritual purpose.
And it's the most natural thing that could have ever happened.
He goes on to speak about time, and I noted this down because this was getting very evolving.
Wait. Just before you get onto the time stuff, I was just thinking, like, what's amazing about what he also just said about the, like, this is absolutely, like, it's instantaneous no matter the distance. Like, it's faster than the speed of light. It doesn't matter how far away. You realize that there's galaxies that, because the universe is expanding and the speed of light, the limitation of the speed of light only applies to like objects inside of the universe, and your the limitation of, like, anything with mass traveling faster and faster is that you need more and more energy to move the mass as it gets closer to the speed of light, right? So you sort of asymptotically need more energy, and the limitation on the speed of objects inside the universe does not apply to the universe itself. So the universe is expanding. And what that means is that there's galaxies that we can see now that are moving so fast that even though we can see them, we see their image from like 10 billion years ago or something. But because they've been expanding away from us for like 10 billion years, and we just see their image when they're only like a small distance away from us, the galaxies now is like so far away that any of the light generated by that galaxy, as it is like quote unquote now, will never actually hit the Earth because will never hit the Milky Way because the galaxy, the space between us and that galaxy is moving faster than the speed of light. It's the edge. It's this. I don't know what the term is, but it's like the edge of the outer universe that's observable. What he's literally saying is he's saying, yeah, but prana, I can communicate with the aliens in the galaxy that is literally so far away and moving so quickly that light will never hit us. He can communicate instantaneously with those animals on those other planets.
It also begs the question: how does he know this? If he too is presumably or was a human being, how did he learn of these things?
What happened in the monastery?
What happened in the monastery? What happened in his MGTOW man cave in China?
What happened to his MGTOW mansion? There's those monasteries on like the side of fucking cliffs.
Yeah,
have you seen those?
Sick.
In like northern India and stuff, they're amazing. I imagine it's just that's his MGTOW mansion. Just him, some fucking like old Chinese fella with like, I imagine just a wispy Fu Manchu and a goat.
Well, as we know, the tropical races can't grow much hair on their upper lips. So it must.
Now, what about? Yeah, sorry. You're just going to talk more shit. It's not going to make any sense. He said, I'm going to look up, where is Sinsan Monastery? I want to know where this is.
While you're doing that,
is this a tropical
I want to read a quote.
Sasa?
Where he talks about time in a way that really gave me some Evola Vietnam flashbacks. He says, imagine a wheel that turns on a perpendicular axis. The wheel rim stands for the material world, the spokes for the immaterial substance, prana, which joins the rim directly to the centre of all this, and the axle situated in the middle represents spirit. Each point on the moving rim needs time to complete a circle, according to human understanding. The spokes of the wheel, however, prana, stay in constant, direct, timeless connection with the axle, spirit. For the axle itself, there is no time, no movement, and no direction. For seen from the axle, the coming and going of any one point is the same, that is, motionless. And I'm assuming, because he talks about Indian philosophy or Hindu philosophy, I'm assuming, quite admiringly in many points in this book, and we know that Evola really liked that as well. So I'm assuming he just took this from some branch of Hindu philosophy. But I got strong Evola world of being / world of becoming vibes from that section.
The annoying thing about these people who do this is that they don't really respect the distinction between these different philosophical and religious traditions. They just kind of treat them like, oh yeah, they're from like the East, quote unquote.
Yeah, well, that's why
the East.
That's why I'm saying Hindu rather than Indian philosophy, because there are plenty of Muslims in India, and I'm not sure they would.
There are plenty of Sikhs,
subscribe to this particular view of the world. So when he talks admiringly about Indian philosophy, I read that as Hindu philosophy, within which that is far from a monolithic whole as well.
I think that would be reasonable. It's Hindu. Yeah, man, Hinduism's sick, dude. In Bali, they've got the monkey god. What's the monkey god? Rajesh? No, Rajesh. Or something.
I don't tend to understand
Hindu
it's so fucking
monkey
complicated.
God. Hanuman. Oh fuck, dude, Hanuman. Dude, the Hindus know how to build a goddamn statue. They've got these statues of Hanuman, and because basically like Indonesia used to be like, mostly Hindu and Buddhist, and now it's mostly Muslim. But Bali's like this one Hindu island in the archipelago, and it is covered in these amazing Hindu statues of like Ganesh and Hanuman and elephants and stuff, and they've got like some fucking massive blade, like a sword. It's like some Yu-Gi-Oh shit, you know. I get around it, man. I want to go to India, check out. I hope they've got sick. Anyways, I keep going about.
Anyway, how about we leave behind the woo-woo chapter and get on to speech?
Yeah. Wait, that's not woo-woo as well.
It is woo-woo, but it's slightly less woo-woo than the previous chapter.
I think that chapter was peak woo-woo.
Speech is intrinsically linked to his woo-woo ideas because... So
the damaged brain, chapter 4, and speech are both like peak woo-woo.
Yeah. I'll start off by saying, the tongue is not an organ of speech, but a digestive organ. It feels the food, brings up the requisite amount of saliva from the salivary glands, and moves the food in the mouth. If the tongue were an organ of speech, then all animals would only have a tongue by some oversight, for no animal uses it to articulate sounds. So a few things here. Other animals do actually use their tongues to articulate sounds. It's not just humans. Organs can serve more than one function.
No, they can't, Jack.
As so, say the skin exists. The skin can regulate temperature. The skin acts as a barrier between the internal and the external environment. The skin is also a sensory organ. Organs can serve more than one function. Evolution can also adapt organs to different functions. So say in the case of human beings, yes, our tongues are extremely dexterous and are very, very adept organs of speech to a greater extent than they are in other animals. That doesn't lessen their digestive function. It's an addition.
Do other animals have oral sex?
I don't know.
Because that's another thing that humans use our tongues for exquisitely well. we've hijacked our highly articulate. Hey, do you reckon that there's any correlation between how articulate a person is, or how many languages they can speak, and how good they are at like giving head?
I'm sure you could probably get an NHMRC grant to have a look at this.
Do you reckon there's like different languages have like different quality of fellatio? You know, like
I'm assuming
there's some language maybe they're like real guttural.
A better
rolled like Spanish. No, Spanish roll their R's, or Italians roll their R's.
Both of them do.
Yeah, sexy. That's why they're sexy languages, because it's like deep subconscious. We know that they give good head. These are the. Here's another. That's a. We should submit that to like
other animals do
nature
things
as well.
like masturbate and stuff like that. So maybe they do. Did you hear that?
The only other species that I think I've ever seen videos of them giving each other head is bonobos. Bonobos get down, but other than that, I've never seen animals giving each other head in all the animal videos I've watched.
If any listeners know the answer to this question, this important question, you let us know in the Discord.
Yeah, come join the Discord when we discuss these important conversations.
Anyway.
This is really moving the needle forward on human knowledge.
Using the tongue to speak is unnatural and bad, and you shouldn't do it. And you only do it because your ancestors were all fucked up cannibals having cannibal sex on monkey brains. So, this fucking book. So basically, the reason why we have speech is because every other animal communicates telepathically, and they don't need speech. And so dumbass human scientists, a member of that group, which ran away with Oscar's girlfriend, spurring his MGTOW moment, think that human speech represents a level of sophistication above that of other animals. No, they are communicating telepathically. They have no need for speech. It's only because we've ruined our brains by eating too many other brains that we can only communicate using language now. Otherwise, we would have died out. That's basically the origin of human speech.
Yeah, can you imagine this guy, like talking to an actual like linguist or something.
He's got this thing
Or
about how
evolutionary anthropologist.
he's got this good
They would
quote
just be
about
like,
one of many pieces of evidence that he adduces for why human speech is unnatural. He says that children can have a hard time with certain sounds. So say in English, the th sound, because children
I'm sure
have trouble with
a
certain
lot
sounds.
of English speaking people have a lot of difficult with a lot of sounds.
Because children have trouble
me
with certain sounds,
talking
it means
these
that
sentences.
languages are unnatural and you shouldn't use them. So he says, if speech was the result of natural development and not a recent makeshift solution to the problem of understanding one another, then all human races would have to be able to form all sounds with the tongue from childhood on, or at least to learn them at a later stage. To which I would say, they can. Say
Yeah, you can.
ethnically, a Han Chinese person who grows up in Australia will speak perfect English with an Australian accent. All races
Yeah.
can learn the phonetic systems of all languages if they grow up in
Do you
that
think
language.
he ever met anybody who was adopted into a different
It's-
like?
I mean, this is one of those
country?
things that he says so passionately, to which I would just respond, well, you're just describing something that exists. Like, if I
Yeah.
grew up in China and spoke Chinese, say Mandarin Chinese from birth, then yeah, I could make those noises.
Yeah, Peterson makes this interesting point, and I didn't fact check him on this, so I don't know if he is telling the truth. But it was before he went totally like fucking like religious revival superstar. He says like infants, when they babble, they actually babble all the phonemes, and the speech development is actually a matter of pruning and refinement. So you actually lose phonemes.
Oh, really?
As you acquire languages. Yeah.
I'm not sure. And Jordan Peterson has been known
Again,
to
I
play a
didn't
bit
fact check
fast and
that,
loose with
so-
the truth in the past. But at least in the context of the beginning was the end, human children can learn the phonetic systems of any language. They're remarkable at it.
Maybe we should read Maps of Meaning sometime
Isn't it really long,
for the
though?
podcast. Yeah.
And the thing is, if you say
Maybe we
something
should
mean
read
about it,
12
we'll get
Rules for
Jordan
Life.
Peterson's fans.
Hey, Jack, do you want to read 12 Rules for Life for the podcast? I think that'd be funny.
Yeah, whatever.
It's self-help.
Yeah, sure.
Make your fucking bed, Jack.
I'd notice that.
Every morning. I know something that you do, Jack, though.
What?
That is in 12 Rules for Life. One of his rules is pet a cat when you see it on the street.
I love cats.
Yeah,
I
there
love
you go.
cats so
I saw a
much.
cat on the street yesterday. Gave it a pat. There's one just down the road, just there. It's nice. Nice, friendly cat. Sits in the sun. Yeah. But also, he talks about like lobsters and shit. So it might be a good book for the podcast.
So, this guy actually does say something true about language. He says, no matter how far languages develop, man will always gesticulate because even the most evolved language is inadequate to express the content of a thought or emotion precisely. So, two things here. One of them is totally wrong. One of them I agree with. So, he says that the fact that humans communicate by gesticulation and facial expressions means that language is unnatural and dumb and bad, to which I would say we can communicate multimodally. That's the obvious answer. That why can't you multimodally communicate? But his point that no language can entirely express a thought or emotion is true. I mean, language always fails you. Whenever you say you're happy, is every time you say you're happy exactly the same? No, there'll be gradations in how you feel. Each time you feel that emotion will be subtly different. It's just compressed when we want to communicate it in language, probably for the purposes of speed. I mean, there's a trade-off between how precisely you
Plus
describe,
there's also
say,
like
your happiness and how quickly you can communicate that. So I'll give him
something I always
partial
found
mark
interesting
for that.
about language was that it's a compact linearization of I guess what you could consider like a field,
Yeah.
or maybe like a field or a high dimensional state space,
Yeah.
which is like your conscious experience, and then you're doing this like one dimensional linear reduction.
Yeah. It's a straight up
to
between
communicate
resolution
that.
and
Like,
speed.
of course, there's going to be a huge loss of information. Yeah, and also the fact that we only have one, or not one. Like, obviously, we have facial expressions and stuff, but we essentially have one, I suppose, high density linguistic organ. Whereas, like, you could imagine that maybe on another planet there might be animals that have evolved multiple kind of mouth-like organs that can communicate maybe multidimensionally, linguistically, multidimensionally, which would be pretty interesting. Yeah, again, shout out to H.P. Lovecraft.
He's got this bit about how being literate is really bad and we should aim for few people to be literate in the world. He says...
So, yeah, I think...
yeah.
I think... no, go on, sorry. I'm just talking more shit.
So he says that the worst part of language, and particularly written language, is that it can be used to deceive people, particularly by scientists. He says, it would be better for mankind if a small number of true thinkers directed events and not that large number of half-learned people who have become men of learning and leaders, not through thought, but through reading. I'm assuming, well, I know that he includes himself in that small number of true thinkers, naturally.
Oh, of course he fucking does.
It's a common feature of every authoritarian.
Him and Klaus can eat the bugs.
That, of course, access to power should be limited. In this case, access to literacy. People love that idea. People love the idea of limiting rights when you're limiting the rights of people who don't agree with you.
It's a recurring theme.
It's like authoritarianism or dictatorship. People are all for it, overwhelmingly for it, when it's their guy in charge. It's only ever evil when it's the wrong person making it.
Or if it's them. Or it's like everybody, young Marxist cunts.
Yeah.
They're always thinking like in the back of their brain, like, yeah, if I were implementing communism, it'd be done properly.
They always love the idea of revolution when it's
the
them lining other people up against the wall. They just can't conceive of the idea that they might be the ones up against the wall.
Like, no, because I'm the true communist. Or I'm the true whatever.
I'm the center of my subjectivity, so of course I'm the main character in this.
And obviously, my point of view is objective.
I agree with all of my opinions, so
come on.
Naturally I'm right.
And everybody who I talk to who disagrees with me is a fucking moron.
Yeah. As judged by me. Yeah, anyway, I think we've said everything there is to say about speech.
Hey, it's getting pretty late here. Let's
get on to the origin of race.
I'm probably going to get to the point of, if I'm not already there, of just being just complete garbage for the conversation. Just getting delusional.
Okay, how about
tightness? The origin of races.
How about I lay out how the human race really started, the origin of races, and then we can read out some quotes. Basically, what happened was
I'm going to share my screen for the viewers on who are watching on YouTube. Shout out to YouTube. Shout out to all our comments on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, those pictures are really good. Levi's showing these.
He's just like, look, they look like monkeys.
He's got pictures, so that he's lined up pictures of humans and pictures of monkeys that look sort of like those humans.
So fucking racist. just the epitome of. I love this monkey here. What is this species of monkey? I've never seen it. He looks like an old man. Looks like a little old man. He's got his little goatee.
Clearly, it looks like a white person. So that's the white monkey. Did they used to have monkeys in Europe? I heard they used to have lions and stuff in Europe, and then the Romans. I don't think so. I think the Romans imported the lions for
no
fun.
Okay, well there you go. I don't know nothing about nothing.
So basically,
All I know is that. Hello.
How humans evolved was you had a monkey of the, I think a male monkey of the African type of monkey and a female monkey of the Asian type of monkey. And both these monkeys were special. They were able to race mix.
So racist.
They could have sex with each other and form viable young, and that's how human beings arose.
But where were the Australasian monkeys? There were no monkeys in Australia.
Well, we'll get to that. So, I quote. So the first human,
he calls them Australoids.
Yeah. So these two monkeys had sex, and their offspring was this special monkey that could race mix with any other type of monkey. And so this special monkey was rejected by all other monkeys because it was a freak. It was the progeny of race mixing. And so it was a solitary and lonely monkey. And I'll read it.
So funny.
Funny about what happened to the monkey with the superpower of being able to race mix. Nevertheless, this solitary creature did later take a mate, but he managed to do so only after a bloody struggle, from which he emerged as victor. The dead victim was a male ape defending his group and his females and trying to drive away the intruder. The victor, who obtained a mate for the first time by means of murdering a member of the breed from which he was descended, was unable to escape with the mate he had stolen because they were surrounded and threatened by the injured group. This selfsame victor had to appease his tormenting hunger by eating his dead victim. Both he and his mate noticed for the first time that eating brain arouses one sexually to a substantially greater extent, what is more, than eating certain plants consumed by apes for this purpose since time immemorial. It was not until later that they noticed that this drug exercised a lasting effect on their ability to think. They thought better. This was the first human couple, the first cannibals. So, you have the African and Asian monkey who race mix. They were special monkeys who could give birth to a child of race mixing. This first human was a freak that other monkeys didn't like. So they killed a male monkey of another race, ate its brain, got really horny, raped a member of that other race. That female gave birth to race-mixed monkey children who then went on to do the same. And so you know how scientists say that humans migrated out of Africa? Well, that didn't happen. What happened was these progeny of race-mixing, monkey brain-eating cannibals spread out and found members of other monkey groups and killed the men, ate their brains, and raped the women. And these women gave birth to more humans, because humans are the mixed race monkey brain eaters, monkey brain eating children. And they spread out, and that process just kept happening until humans covered the earth. The problem with this theory, the only problem with this theory, because otherwise it's a watertight theory, is that it implies that the entire earth was covered with monkeys. So say in Australia, where there's no evidence that monkeys existed, for this theory to work, for humans to have existed in Australia, then Australia would have had to have been covered by monkeys for these humans to rape, to give birth to Aboriginal people who will then go on to find more monkeys to rape And that's how
And what
humans
about
spread.
Polynesia? What about all of the Polynesian islands and stuff? Like
What about the
Micronesia and
entire
stuff?
part of the majority of the Earth's surface where there weren't monkeys?
What about the Sami? Where they're little, the Sami up in the indigenous people of Scandinavia, the little ice monkeys running around there. Or does he account for just human migration?
No.
He says that each race came from a progenitor species of monkeys.
Because he's like, oh, well, there's too much variety between human races for humans to have come from one race of apes. No. that variety can't come from human beings evolving in a certain environmental niche. Like, say, people who live further north in Europe having lighter skin because they need to absorb more sunlight for vitamin D production. No. That couldn't possibly have evolved. It's because their ancestors raped a different group of monkeys to race mix and produce them. And he does have this bit, though. The one types of monkeys that did migrate were the cannibal offspring of certain monkeys who rejected that cannibal lifestyle and so fled. Some of these fled to the Himalayas, and they still live there, and those are yetis. Some of them fled to North America, where they became Sasquatches. Hairy men who still have ESP.
He fucking loves it.
Yeah. I will actually give him partial marks for this quote. On the subject of race, realization of the following fact is of importance. The color of the skin has absolutely nothing to do with the level of intelligence. Which race is more intelligent depends only on when their ape ancestors
it has everything to do with your cranial
into
capacity.
Cannibal human beings and how often they practiced cannibalism. The fact... So the first part of that, I'll give him credit for. Skin color and intelligence are not correlating. I give that
generous,
thumbs
Jack.
up. But then he basically says,
you're a saint.
Darker skin color means that they didn't eat brains for as long. So I'll give him partial marks for that. This shows how we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, where we look at that quote and go, okay, he's being relatively sensible here.
Yeah, you're being extremely generous.
I think this illustrates the experience of reading this book. As I'm reading through, when I read the sentence and he says the color of the skin has absolutely nothing to do with the level of intelligence, I think, wow, fuck, this guy's really speaking some truth now. And then I realized, no, he's actually just doing the bare minimum to be a reasonable human being.
Yeah. Okay, so he's got this quote. The various human races came into being earlier or later and will also disappear in accordance with their date of birth, for whatever reason. When the early developing races have long since annihilated themselves by means of their delusion-ridden intelligence, the later developing races, I assume it means... What did he call Australoids? Australioids. He calls them Australioids. Later developing races still have a long time to live, provided they have not been exterminated by the early developing races. What sense is there then in boasting about one's age if this is the same time the announcement of one's earlier death?
Yeah.
It gets into some weird, cosmological predictions or prophecies. Surely those races that already today are unable to feed their young on their own breasts will not exist longer. It will be those still well able to do so. Nor does the future belong to those who are able to sleep, digest, and laugh only with the help of pills, or who have to wait for someone on the next street corner to be run over or beaten up by some criminal in order to have this heart transplanted into themselves. Why, therefore, be ashamed if one belongs to a so-called underdeveloped race, which has not yet unlearnt how to laugh and sing? It's kind of a weird, he's trying to be progressive and be it's it's not bad to be from.
He does also say though that the cure for racism is for all races to live apart. That's the only way.
Because that's how chimps and shit, they have segregation. So he says, peace reigns among apes as a matter of course, as it does amongst all other animals, and the racial hatred and persecution because of cultural differences are unknown to them. Such phenomena are found only in the realm of Homo sapiens, who took it upon themselves to approve everything on Earth. Why is this so? So it's like, we tried to get better by like eating brains or something, and that made us racist.
Yeah. Can you be bothered going through the section on Genesis? He has an entire chapter on Genesis in the Bible.
No, I didn't even really like understand what he was talking about.
He basically,
let's give a high
level. He basically says, the story of humanity being cast out from the Garden of Eden is actually ancestral knowledge describing eating brains, and he flicks between, depending on what is most convenient, saying, theologians are so fucking stupid because they keep looking for metaphors in something that is obviously to be taken literally. And then sometimes he will draw a really long bow in looking for an analogy describing eating brains in the Garden of Eden story and say, look, these theologians are fucking idiots. They can't pick up on these simple metaphors. So I would say his biblical exegesis is somewhat lacking. So he also complains that all other interpretations of Genesis are totally arbitrary and only his is based on fact. But basically, like you can kind of work out what he means. So what is the apple? What is the fruit of the tree of knowledge? Well, it's a human brain. The snake tempting,
kind of like he says something about like nudism.
Yeah, the snake tempting Eve.
Naked.
He says that snakes are symbols of sexuality, which is why we subconsciously associate sex, knowledge, and original sin. He also says that, so Adam comes alive when God breathes the breath of life into his nostrils. He said, well, clearly, this is half spirit, prana, the cosmic energy. He just says that Adam and Eve have fur coats. I don't know if that's anywhere in the Bible, but he just says they have fur coats, which represents the...
No, that's a metaphor.
Some metaphor that I can't be fucked remembering. I didn't write it down. At this point, my notes are pretty spare. I was so fucking sick of this book.
Fuck you, Jack. It's a metaphor. Study English literature. Hey, man.
He's got this thing about how... So God made Eve from one of Adam's ribs. And he says, this is a point where he goes, oh, this is clearly metaphorical. You know, all these dumbasses are thinking of it literally, having... only in a previous paragraph said, oh, these people are looking for metaphors, they're dumbasses, this is clearly literal. So he said that the male ape, the African ape, who raped the Asian ape, the African ape had 13 ribs and the Asian ape had 12. But the offspring, the male offspring, also had 12 ribs. So obviously when God made Eve out of one of Adam's ribs, what the authors of this story really meant to say was that an African ape with 13 pairs of ribs had sex with an Asian ape with 12 pairs of ribs, and their offspring had 12 pairs of ribs. But I don't know how people didn't see this before. Clearly we didn't need enough brains if we're this stupid that we couldn't see the truth staring us in the face about
I think he wrote this right after eating some chimp brain or something. Hey? And he had a clear vision.
So Adam and Eve, having eaten the fruit of knowledge, hid from God because they were naked. And he says this is clearly an allusion to the fact that they lost their fur coats. God clothed them with animal skins before casting them out of the garden, which means that before human beings or apes were vegetarian, but now they eat meat, which is a bad thing.
Sure.
And in casting them out of the garden, God curses Adam and Eve in numerous ways, that they will die. He says that the snake will crawl on the earth and bruise her heel, so bruise Eve's heel. What does this mean? Well, this means females, so the females of the species, are now cursed to live with sexual desire.
Females. I'm going to cut up Terence McKenna's voice saying females. If I can find him saying it. Females.
So he says, this sexual desire for men is the snake which can bruise woman's heel at any time. She displays no sex signs and gets an inordinate amount of pleasure from sex. Too much pleasure from sex that he says is entirely unnatural, and it's not okay. He says the reason why why a tree of knowledge with a fruit of knowledge? Well, he says because these stories were initially written in pictograms and not in alphabets, I quote, only a person who has ever tried to decipher an old picture script knows how difficult it is to distinguish between the hieroglyph for a tree and that for a man. So basically what happened is, originally in pictographic script, it was a human being and their brain was the thing that was eaten to grant Adam and Eve knowledge. However, we're dumbasses and we misread the script. And we misread a man and a brain for a tree and a fruit. Obviously. He then goes on to say, in an echo of Terence McKenna, Genesis, correctly interpreted, is the only incontrovertible description of man's origin. Correctly interpreted.
I meant to say with those pictures of the apes next to the people of different races. The pictorial evidence is incontrovertible. The theological evidence is incontrovertible.
Man. Yeah.
Exegenic? Is that what it's called? Exegesis, exegenic.
Do you have anything to add to that?
The
cannibalistic exegesis.
I fucking hate this book. I want to finish this, and I'm tired.
Last chapter. I hate.
I'm sorry. It's like
so
it's like 10 p.m. over here, man. I'm hitting a wall super hard.
Yeah. No, I haven't eaten for 3 days, and my brain's not working.
You're looking great, mate. You are looking like you've just. I know you've fasted for a few days, but you look like you've just eaten about 3 kilos of primate brains, mate. You're glowing. I can, even though on my end of the screen you're incredibly pixelated, I can still tell that your skin is glowing
with vitality. That's how I'm going to break my fast.
You're looking 5 years younger. Hey, everybody, you don't know what day we're filming this or when we're releasing this. Who knows? Who the fuck knows? But recently it was Jack's birthday, so shout out to Jack. Happy birthday.
Yeah, I turned 30.
Everybody get in the fucking Discord and celebrate Jack's birthday, you fucking cunts. I don't know how I'm abusing the listeners now. It's just because I'm overtired. Yes, but happy birthday to Jack.
Last chapter, chapter 9, the immediate future. Let's finish this. I hate this book. No one should read it.
The immediate futurists are all fucked. He doesn't like modern civilization. He says something about like what is it? Like he says some shit about like when you're born, you have the memory of your previous life, but it only goes 70 years into the future or something.
It's something like the youth of today are rebelling against the world because in the womb you still have ESP. And I don't know, that just meant, like, for some reason, only now the youth have decided that they don't like the world.
What has been perceived before birth sinks down into the subconscious and influences man's thinking and actions throughout his life.
What else does he do? He complains about the United States of America. ESP. We need to embrace Eastern philosophy. I don't know what the fuck that means because that encompasses many different cultures and thousands of years of history.
3 billion people. From like so many different ethnic groups. It's the East.
Your average guy living in New Delhi and your average guy living in Beijing are exactly the same. No difference. No different outlook on life. All East.
They're just the East. They're just East. They're east of like kind of Paris.
Doesn't matter that say Melbourne, Australia is of a very similar latitude to, I don't know, parts of Japan. Fuck, the same, all the same.
And it's inhabited primarily by Australioids and colonizing Indo-Europeans. No, it's a multicultural country. We got all sorts of
levels of
Australopithecus descendant also all sorts of descendants of cannibals from all different ape origins, from all the different monkeys extant and extinct from across the face of the planet. Little ice monkeys turning into Samis and little desert monkeys turning into blackfellas in the middle of Australia.
Look, he says, okay, here's something I can praise him for. Humans must resist, or the youth of today, in his turn of phrase, must resist the modern world, but they have to do it passively and renounce violence. Good, okay, don't be too violent. There's something. That's pretty much the end of the book. The book ends really
That's
suddenly.
such a stretch.
The book ends with him promising that he's going to write a lot more books on this subject, and he didn't write many more books, so that's also something I'll give him.
When I looked into it, he didn't actually write any more books. The one thing that he released was actually the transcript of a speech.
Okay. Well, that's a plus. I'll give him that. Good on him for not writing any more.
Yeah, I mean, I might be mistaken, but that's what I found. Okay, so that's the book. Let's do some exiting thoughts.
Exiting thoughts. I hated this fucking book so much. Quite frequently, I don't enjoy the readings that we do for this podcast, but this was particularly bad.
This was bad, hey. I hated it so much.
So bad.
I really hated this. I chose this book half as like it was a bit of Schadenfreude. But of course, if like every time I make Jack suffer, I suffer as well. It's completely self-destructive behavior.
Our rating system started out as, what would you give it out of 10? It started out much more.
Our rating system is completely
what would you give it out of
meaningless.
10? How serious do you think this person was? Blah, blah, blah. Now my rating system is basically, would I recommend it to anyone or not? I wouldn't recommend this book to anyone. This book fucking sucks.
I think this book is worth printing and then burning. I'm normally against book burning. But in this case, I think you can burn this book.
I think I would recommend anything else on this podcast to read than this. Because this book there's almost in that it's this combination of being boring and profoundly irritating at the same time.
It's so just his writing style is so arrogant. It's arrogant, it's moronic, it's stupid, it's condescending, it's stupefying, it's racist, it's chauvinistic, and
it's got so much woo woo.
And it's woo woo. Oh, and
it's got everything.
Of course, it's
the only thing it doesn't have is some like
short tolerance for
some
woo-woo.
like self-help guru multi-level marketing pitch halfway through. He didn't have that, so it can get worse.
Dude, MLMs make so much money. We should start an MLM. Help us turn Book Club from Hell into an MLM. Look, what we'll do is if you get somebody to join the Discord, and they get somebody to join the Discord, and it costs $10 to join the Discord, you'll get $5 of that $10 when they join the Discord, and you'll get $2 of the person that they asked to join.
In reality, you'll get nothing, but we might give you a shout out.
In reality, you'll get nothing because it doesn't cost fuck all to join the Discord because this fucking podcast doesn't have enough viewers, nor is there any reason to charge people to join the Discord. Gatekeep the two people in our Discord, the two people in my girlfriend. Yeah, no, join the Discord. It's not an MLM. Not an MLM. That's our sales pitch for the Discord. It's not an MLM.
Not a CIA psyop.
Not a pyramid scheme. Yeah, there's no Floyd Mayweather trying to like scam you out of your crypto. So, Jack is Floyd Mayweather. Jack money. So what did I think of this book? I thought it was fucking garbage and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's not even one of those things that I would recommend on the like, haha, this is like kind of fucking weird. You know, like I could recommend Robert Anton Wilson to the right person if they're just like kind of like into weird shit. You know, if they're just kind of into weird stuff, they're just like, yeah, sure, it's kind of strange book, interesting ideas, kind of dumb. But this, I couldn't recommend this to anybody.
The amount of shit you have to wade through for the wackiness, there's just too much.
No. Having said that, I've chosen the last two books, I believe. So, Jack, if you would like to, you can select the next book if you're particularly inclined. So you don't have to choose now, but if you, so Eye of Argon, I sent that to you. So you chose Gothic Violence.
Yeah.
Then I did Eye of Argon and the beginning of Infinity. Not the beginning was the end. So yeah, if you've got any in mind, let me know. But listeners, of course. Yeah, hey, listeners. Now that we're at the end of the episode, I want to just quickly, obviously, keep on pimping the Discord. We've got other socials, but they haven't really stuck as much. But we're actually people are starting to join the Discord, which is kind of cool. By people, I mean 3 people, but still, three's better than 0.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because what we have been finding is that a couple of people who've joined are really interesting people and really funny and fun to chat with. And they've been giving us interesting recommendations with books that we could include on the book club. So I guess we'll just give another shout out to Hylick and to Trent and to Keon, who literally just joined. And one other shout out to we got a lovely email from another listener, Isaac, who sent us just a very encouraging email. He said he found the BAP episode and he thought it was very funny and gave us a recommendation. So, hey everybody, we even if we're not the most responsive because Jack and I just fucking people. We look at your stuff that you send us, and even on YouTube we look at your comments and stuff, and if we don't reply straight away it's because we're unorganized, but we read them and we really appreciate it. So shout out to all the people who are getting around us. Thank you so much.
It's a nice feeling, not feeling like you're screaming into the void. It's really cool seeing that some people actually listen to this.
It is really nice, hey, isn't it? What have you felt from the user, or not user, but audience engagement?
Really encouraging. It's really nice that someone takes the time to write and say that they like it. I don't have anything more.
And we're just doing that.
It's just nice.
No, it's really nice. It's really encouraging, and we're just doing this because we obviously enjoy talking to each other, and we enjoy some of the similar same things exploring these weird stuff. And we didn't know if there would be anybody out there in the world that would be interested in this kind of weird stuff as well, but we thought maybe there would be. And it's cool to see that, yeah, there are some other strange people out there. So thanks so much for listening.